Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy. Without any further interruptions, enjoy the what if. Kurama, now listen, I know what you're planning on doing, and let me just tell you, it's not going to end how you think it will. Naruto explained as he hopped over Yuki's dragon form as she reached out to grab onto him. This time, Naruto had decided that he would steal directly from the hero directly, at their own office. Naruto had broken into Yuki's hero office, and stolen her off-duty clothes, meaning that she was stuck in her hero costume unless she wanted to go to her house in her hero costume. Naruto had it hidden in a hidden pocket inside of his jacket as he ran from her. Yuki jerked her head around, and looked behind herself. You won't escape capture forever, you're going to slip up. Yuki didn't see him behind her, instead, she felt him standing on her back. She turned her neck at an odd angle, and tried to snap her jaws at him to capture him inside of her mouth. He ducked. You know, you heroes are on the news all the time, most of your opponents are aware of what you can do. Heroes are naturally at a disadvantage as well, and you still don't know my quirk either. Naruto explained as he grabbed onto her lower jaw, and she made sure to snap her jaws closed so he couldn't poison her. He wasn't even upset though, he just grinned and stuck himself to her. Heroes had a lot of trouble to compete with, before their fights even begun. I just have to distract him long enough for the others to arrive. Yuki thought as she started to whip her head back and forth. She needed to stick to the plan. You know, your panties are surprisingly sexy, you think you're going to get lucky tonight. She needed to hurt this little shit. They are more comfortable gak. Yuki transformed back into human form when Naruto had poisoned her the second she opened her mouth, sticking his hand onto her tongue. She was blushing even in human form, while Naruto stood above her, holding onto his string panties, spinning them around his finger while giving her a cocky look. Quote. You've beaten me, so escape why don't you? Yuki spat with a twitching eye. While his acts were seen as little more than pranks most of the time now, the fact remains that a villain was beating heroes and causing them some image hurt. Thankfully, the criminals he inspired to copy him weren't as talented as he was, and were captured as soon as they committed a crime. That helped to tame the flow of people who tried to copy him, since he stood out as a unique exception to villains losing to heroes. Sue, your backup should be arriving in like 3 seconds, right? Naruto asked her with a grin. You know, I'm really good at spying on heroes. Naruto mentioned when he heard the sounds of somebody large walking behind him. Then you'll do good behind. Like Endeavor for example, spiking his morning coffee before stealing from your office, and knowing you two were conspiring against me really makes this funnier. Naruto didn't even look behind him, he didn't need to in order to see that the flame hero was on the ground, having collapsed from the fact he was already poisoned before the battle even took place. Hey Endeavor, did you know that when you have a tall building as your base of operations, villains like me can sneak in really easy? Naruto turned and finally looked at Endeavor, face first on the ground. He was growling at Naruto. When you were mumbling to yourself about your son or whatever. When you're mumbling about your son, you ignore everything around you. This is like the 9th time I've snuck into your office, and you've never noticed me. Naruto didn't like to brag, total lie, he loved bragging, but the fact that Endeavor was arrogant and didn't check his office for villains, really made it a lot easier for him to sneak in and out. So, that takes care of the number 9 and number 2 heroes. You know Endeavor, other than being an ass, I do like you more than All Might. Naruto stated as he took Endeavor's shoes. Endeavor just growled more at the sarcasm he believed he could hear in Naruto's voice. Poisoning me before the battle even started. Hey, you people have been holding meetings on how to take me out. Guys gotta even the playing field, though, it seems Mirko doesn't drink her coffee. Naruto frowned when he jumped into the air, just as Mirko slammed into the ground where he had been, cratering it with ease. He landed on the side of the building, watching as the smoke cleared, and Mirko was revealed. Coffee tastes bitter, and makes me poop, so I don't drink it if I can help it. You should have poisoned my carrot juice instead, I would have been so poisoned by that, but now I'm going to pummel you. Mirko shouted, and gave him advice at the same time. Yuki and Endeavor looked at her like she was stupid. And I went through so much trouble poisoning the entire top 10 today. Come on then, try and catch me. Naruto grinned down at Mirko. His body started to vanish from view, his clothes vanishing as well, leaving Mirko confused at first, until her rabbit ears picked up the sound of Naruto moving on the side of the building. He can go invisible, that doesn't add up with poison, Yukio stated under her breath, confused. Endeavor didn't correct her, but he noticed that Naruto wasn't completely invisible, but instead, he was making himself the same color as the building behind him. Looking carefully, you would be able to see him, and to color change properly, he needed to move slowly or stay still so that his disguise wasn't ruined. He's on the ground, Mirko, in front of you, 10 meters. Endeavor directed Mirko, and she jumped into action, causing Naruto to slowly turn back to his normal colors. He jumped backwards and avoided Mirko easily enough, he was practiced with avoiding her more than anyone else. No fun, and I wanted to test out this outfit's ability to change color as I changed my skin's poison color. Naruto lied about his quirk in a subtle way, giving them a wrong explanation about why he was able to change his skin color. Now, they would think that he covered his body in differently colored poisons, so that he blended in with his surroundings. It would help throw them off his quirk's trail. Naruto grinned and he landed on Endeavor's back, giving him a pat on the top of the head. Get off me, oh, you are just the cutest. Naruto gave Endeavor's cheeks a few gentle slaps, adding a little more poison to cripple his ability to use his quirk to burn stuff around him. Endeavor grew even weaker, and his quirk weakened with him. Anyway, from now on, I promise not to sneak into your base and poison you guys, if you promise not to make plans to gang up on me in 10 vs 1 matches. So, you also poisoned All Might then? Mirko asked as she jumped at Naruto, throwing a spin kick at him. Oh, All Might was the easiest one, some fan of him sent him a lot of milk this morning, so I poisoned it, and I stayed to make sure that he drank enough. I'm not fast enough to escape from that guy without cheating, so I didn't want him even showing up today. Naruto reached into his jacket pocket, and he pulled out something golden colored. It was hair. Naruto had a fistful of hair, that kind of stood up on its own, and it was cleanly cut through, and Naruto put the hair up against the top of his head, giving himself a slight bunny ear. Naruto quickly put his trophy back into his pocket, and jumped away from Mirko, before he started to escape the area. Oh, then now I have to catch you. Catching the guy who took out All Might, now that will get me some popularity. Mirko shouted as she used all of her power to rush at Naruto. Shit, Naruto screamed when he realized that he had just painted the biggest target on himself he could have ever painted. Naruto looked at the reporters who were recording this event, and he was nearly kicked in the head by Mirko. He had taken All Might out, because he knew All Might would have caught him, but he didn't realize by taking All Might out and advertising it to all of Japan, that he had just did something really stupid. Him and his big dumb mouth. Why did he open his mouth and say that? I'm coming. Please don't. Also, you've got some weird fetishes. Naruto couldn't resist the urge to open his mouth and quip at her when she said that. His villain persona demanded that he make light of his current, very bad, situation since she set him up for a one-liner. Shit. Naruto cursed in his head, and he traveled at his top speed to get away from Mirko until he had the chance to take her down. With All Might, I really should be more careful about what I drink. All Might, a super tall and skinny man with messy hair, spoke to himself as he laid face down on the ground, listening to the news he had playing in his office. One of his hair horns was missing from his head, so he was going to have to get hair extensions until his hair naturally grew back to its normal length. Even with his power, it didn't mean much if he wasn't able to move his body because he had been poisoned. Some quirks could kill even him if he was hit with them, and he was thankful he hadn't been poisoned with something that would have killed him. Though, he would use this as a learning experience. Back with Naruto. Achu, Titan Cliff. Naruto crashed into the softest thing he had ever felt in his life, as Mt. Lady and Kamui Woods appeared in front of him, coming up out of the water and appeared in front of him, blocking his escape route. Naruto crashed right into Mt. Lady's right tit, sinking into her flesh deep enough that his entire body sank into her boob, before her breast returned back to its normal shape and he bounced out of her breast. Naruto was sent flying in the opposite direction, cursing the fact that he had sneezed at a time like this. Whoever made him sneeze, Naruto hoped that he was having a bad day. Naruto made it work for him through, and touched Mirko's face as he passed by her, before he landed in the river himself. Naruto started to swim down to the bottom of the river, using his toad quirk to speed himself up greatly. Reaching the bottom of the river, and it was a cold river, Naruto started to swim away, no longer visible to the heroes who were pursuing him. He saw Mirko land in the water, the poison taking her down, and he saw Mt. Lady's massive hand scoop Mirko up out of the water back to safety. Still, he needed to be super careful about how much he ran his mouth off in the future. He hoped this didn't come to bite him in the ass. Damn him, he had All Might on a silver platter, and didn't finish him off. Damn him, characters like him make the game that much harder. A young adult spoke as tapped his finger against the bar he was sitting at, and he was the only person in the entire bar other than a man with a shadow-like face wearing a business suit, his own clothes being simple but with hands covering them. He looked upwards at the TV that was in the room, gritting his teeth as he watched the news rave and rant about the friendly villain who was able to take out the top 10 without hurting them. Kurama will just never be caught, will he? After all, I can't see a villain able to take out All Might as somebody who can be caught. The young man tapped against the table even faster. The bartender didn't tense up, he just looked at the young man with his glowing eyes, and turned his head towards a black radio, turning it up when he heard a voice coming out of it. Now Tamura, that isn't a way to speak of your natural ally. Master, I want to kill All Might, and this guy could have done it, but he didn't, he left All Might alive, I want to kill him. He needs to die for not taking the chance I would have died for. Tamura spoke as he tapped his finger furiously against the table. He looked like he was going to snap any moment, his throat sounding sandy, and his other hand was scratching at his throat a little. A small chuckle came through the radio. He'll join the League of Villains soon enough, this is where he belongs. Kurogiri, your opinion? Is that why you had Jiren supply him with those outfits? To bribe him? Kurogiri asked as he glanced at the radio, never stopping what he was doing. He maintained a professional air about him. No, he doesn't need to be bribed, he will come naturally to us. If he were to take up a villain mantle, then it is simply fitting that he wears fitting clothes. Tamura, he's a valuable ally, and the more famous he becomes, the more heroes will pursue him for fame. We have no need to do anything to convince him. We've already showed out generosity, he will remember that we never asked for anything in return, and join us once the hero world becomes too much for him. You sound sure of this. Who is this boy to you? Kurogiri asked through the radio as Tamura listened to the conversation, his eyes softening now that he was listening to his master's voice more clearly. He comes from a line of people immune to having their quirk stolen. His mother had a rare quirk, sealing chain, which could create chains that would wrap around others and seal both their abilities to move and use their quirks. Suffice to say, I tried and failed to steal her quirk, so I went to her parents, and failed to steal their quirks, and when her son was born, I failed to steal his toad quirk. They are immune to All for One, your power? Tamura asked with narrowing eyes. All for One, the power to steal, use, and give away the quirks of others with nothing but a touch to somebody's forehead. Nobody but the person with One for All could ever hope to avoid having their quirk stolen from them, but to hear a genetic line of people were able to resist his quirk-stealing power was frightening, to be honest. To see his perfect master had people he wasn't able to steal from was scary. Not immune completely. When this young man was born, when I tried to steal his quirk, I also tested this. I tried giving him a quirk, and that worked. Not only is their lineage able to not have their quirk stolen, but they can also hold multiple quirks with no negative side effects. All for One spoke through the radio with some excitement audible in his voice. So, he's using multiple quirks to evade the heroes. Cheater. He is so far unaware he even holds more than a single quirk, but soon, once he tastes true anger, his other quirks will activate. Until then, just allow him to make jokes of the heroes. All for One stated with a slightly more forceful tone, just to show that he was serious about leaving Naruto alone for the moment. Once his heart is flooded with hate, then the world would come face to face with a monster. High school, I'm not becoming a hero. I know you don't want to be a hero, and I'm not going to make you. Nimari sat across the table from Naruto. she had managed to catch him as he came home from school before he vanished for the afternoon. He had been staying at the apartment the last few days, without leaving like he usually did, so she wanted to show him something that she had been working on for him. Quote, I said I was going to support you if you wanted to make a new orphanage. I am sorry that you lost your birthright, I didn't know. I don't want. Please, let me finish. Nimari was very patient, but she didn't like being interrupted by anyone. She could understand. Naruto was going to hold a grudge against her, and she accepted that. That didn't change the fact that she had decided to adopt him, and by adopting him, she became his family, his mother. She had made a promise to herself that she was going to do her hardest to give him a better life, and love him. She blinked when she saw Naruto frown, and she waited for him to say something biting. Then finish. I don't want your excuses though. Naruto crossed his arms and got comfortable, staring her down with his full attention. She blinked in surprise. Also, was it her, or did he seem really tired, and kind of pale? Me being sorry won't change things. I'm going to fix my mistake. I want to help you start anew, but you have to graduate from a high school. Your test scores from your current school aren't good. Nimari wasn't going to hide this fact. Naruto attended school just barely enough to allow him to graduate from middle school, and his test scores reflected that very well as well. But I can get you into UA with a letter of recommendation. I promise to help you be able to give orphan children the gift of having a family, and I will tutor you myself, but UA is the only school that I can submit my recommendation to as a teacher. Nimari explained to him, and she waited for him to interrupt her or say something biting. He didn't. He frowned more deeply, and tightened his arms up in front of his chest, but she smiled a little when she saw he was considering her words a little. Quote, Go on, Naruto told her when he saw her waiting. You're listening to me, I don't have a choice, do I? Quote, UA isn't just a hero school, it has an excellent support class, business class, and general studies. I spoke with the principal, and he said the general studies would be happy to have you on my recommendation. Nimari, smiling a little, reached out to touch the side of Naruto's face to enact a little skinship with him, was saddened when he moved his head back to refuse her that. He was willing to listen to her talk now, but she could see he still hadn't forgiven her of the fact that she stole his family legacy from him. She had uprooted his life and his dreams for the future, so it was no surprise that it would take some time before she was forgiven, and more time before he really came to see her as his mother. Still, he didn't jerk away from her as violently as she expected he would have. Quote, I don't want to run an orphanage. I wanted my parents' orphanage. I wanted to continue their legacy. Naruto's eyes narrowed in anger at her, because he had put some thought into it. His parents had died before they could truly be parents, and they turned him into an orphan, but they had left him with such a large legacy. He had been proud that he would have eventually been able to own their business. He had looked forward to it when he learned that his toad quirk being lame, and him being a teenage boy meant he wasn't likely to be adopted. Now that he was adopted, and lost out on the orphanage, he was more lost now than ever. Quote, Well, what do you want? Nimari was willing to help him achieve his dreams, whatever they be now. Naruto didn't answer. He just took the enrollment forms for UA and looked down at them. Before he squeezed them tight enough he almost ripped them. Nimari patiently waited with her hands on her leg, right crossed over left, and just sat silently as he looked over everything. She saw rage and sadness boiling over in his eyes as they trembled with emotion. I don't know what I want anymore. Naruto whispered to himself, not Nimari. He didn't even mean to whisper it out loud. His thoughts just sort of escaped his mouth, and she could see not just the rage now, or the sorrow, but she could see he was confused as well. She had turned his life upside down, and this was why she was so patient with him. He was angry, sad, confused, and he didn't know what to do anymore. She understood his teenage emotions very well. She had experienced all of them herself when she was his age or at some point in her life. She already fucked up in forcing the adoption on him, even though she hadn't meant to hurt him. He didn't hate her, and deep down, she was sure that he understood her feelings were genuine, but he was driven by emotion, not logic or reasoning. You don't have to join UA. If you don't get into a high school, I'll tutor you and help you pass the entrance exams of any school you pick. U.A. is the best high school, and I knew I could get you in before the year starts. Nemuri didn't want him to think that this was the only choice he had at this point. Naruto glanced at her, his grip on the papers softening, though he was still angry. Fine, you win, I'll go to UA. Naruto got up and started to head towards the bathroom, leaving her sitting alone. Nemuri sighed in relief and relaxed. Still, that was stressful. I didn't know if he was going to fly into a rage. I wish he would yell at me, and get some of this off of his chest. Nemuri sighed to herself and ran a hand through her ponytail. She had started to read several books on motherhood, tips about how to grow closer with your son. She also read books about what to expect with adopted children, and how to grow closer to them. Skinship was mentioned as the #1 way to form a closer bond, and she remembered taking baths with her mother and father until she was in middle school, and she was extremely close to her father still. She knew friends of her that still went to hot springs and public baths with their parents, but she was also pretty sure Naruto would not have a great reaction to her if she tried to form a bond with him right now, skinship or not. With Naruto, I'm so damn dizzy. My head hasn't been right since I escaped from Mirko the other day, my head is pounding. Naruto rubbed the side of his head, not thinking super clearly with his headache. Namori's actions and words were getting to him too, so walking towards the tub, Naruto turned the heat on so that by the time he showered, the tub would be heated up. Naruto shook his head to clear the webs from his brain. Later that night, Naruto, you've had the water running for a while now. I think you've showered long enough. Nemuri knocked on the door, waiting for an answer back. She could still hear the shower running, and it had been running for a long time now, almost 2 hours. She had gotten so preoccupied making dinner and reading a book, that she hadn't even noticed that Naruto was still in the shower. No answer. Nemuri frowned and cracked open the door, just in case he didn't hear her when she was speaking, but she made sure to respect his privacy by not looking. Naruto, your shower is done now, other people need to. Nemuri opened the door completely when she noticed Naruto's leg flat on the ground, and seeing him fully, she saw that he had collapsed at some point, the water just running across the back of his head as he laid prone. She rushed to his side and the water started to rain down on her, wetting her clothes, as she flipped him over and saw his face was boiling red. She put the back of her head against his forehead, and saw that he was burning up. She put her hand on his chest, and could feel his heartbeat moving weakly. Nemuri picked Naruto up and rushed out of the bathroom, rushing into her own room and laying him down on her bed as she got him out of the hot water. She didn't waste a moment to grab her phone as she started to dial up somebody that could help her. The next day, at the hospital, he's not dying, he's just really sick. His immune system was depleted, seems he took a dip in cold water and weakened himself. His blood work showed traces of chlorine. People with toad or frog quirks can absorb liquids and oxygen through their skin. Normally, this isn't a problem with a human immune system being strong. The doctor spoke as he looked at the charts. Nemuri had rushed Naruto to a hospital, since she didn't know what was wrong with him or what to do. And, he's sick, and his body absorbed chlorine from overchlorinated water. Sometimes water companies put too much in the water they purify. He'll recover soon enough. He needs to use organic shampoo and body wash without chemicals until he fully recovers though. The doctor started to write down the proper stuff that he should be using with his skin being the way it was. We see this a lot with those with amphibian-like quirks. When they get sick, their bodies lose their resistance to chemicals that they can usually withstand with ease. The doctor eased Namori's worries. Her hand went to her heart. Thank you, this is a relief. I'll go pick up what I need. You have no idea how worried I was. You came rushing into the hospital in a soaked sweater, riding an ambulance with a naked teenager, demanding medical attention. It says you adopted him. I suggest reading up about toad facts. I'll do that. Nemuri didn't argue against him, or even say that she was already doing that. She wasn't researching toads, she had just looked up some stuff about people with toad, frog quirks and how they reacted to certain things. Naruto's mutation quirk didn't affect his physical appearance, so it was very easy to forget the fact that he was still very much a mutant type, and thus, he was prone to following the rules of the species he was mutated after. Nemuri reached down to pat Naruto's head. She stopped herself though, uncomfortable. Naruto hadn't accepted her yet, so she would hold herself back. Whoa, Midnight, surprise surprise, didn't expect to see the infamous exhibitionist here at a hospital. Midnight blinked when she heard the somewhat familiar voice of Mirko behind her. The two of them had never really worked together, but both of them were famous heroes, so that they were on rather friendly terms, despite not really knowing each other. They knew each other in passing pretty much, as popular heroes, but you could not call them friends by any stretch of the imagination. There was simply mutual respect, one would say, and it allowed them to get along well enough. Though, Midnight wasn't a fan of Mirko's loud mouth. I'm just visiting, just got off work today, some of us are teachers now. Midnight spoke with a tired smile. Naruto was getting better, but cleaning the toxins from his blood that were keeping him sick wasn't an easy process. He had been in the hospital for 3 days already, and he had missed his first day of school at UA already. He wasn't sick anymore, they were just flushing his body to make sure that he didn't get sick again, and boosting his immune system so that it would become a little stronger. I'm doing some community service, going to visit the sick kids and tell them hero stories. Mirko said as she flexed her arm, and gripped her muscle. Being a hero wasn't all punching and that good stuff, sometimes it was just patrolling, doing paperwork, and making public appearances to keep up a good image. With how many times she had been defeated by Kurama recently, she really needed to keep up a good image, to sort of correct the damage being done to her reputation. They stopped together at the check-in. Midnight, coming to see Uzumaki Naruto. Midnight stayed with a smile. Mirko, hear about seeing visit the kids' ward. Mirko gestured to herself with a bigger smile, puffing out her chest to make a bigger impression than Midnight. Midnight just sent her a look that said, really, but otherwise let it go. 3rd floor, in the playroom, both of you. 3rd floor, playroom. You're so awesome, Ni-chan. Ah, this is nothing. Naruto said loudly as he held up 2 children on his biceps, allowing them to hang off of him as he walked on the ceiling. They were laughing and smiling, using his arms like a jungle gym. Naruto was grinning, feeling a lot better after having his system flushed for a few days. He had decided that it was time for him to help make the hospital stay for the sick children a little better, so he asked if it was allowed for him to play with the kids, and the doctors agreed with it. Naruto's tongue shot out of his mouth, and wrapped around a kid's waist, before he lifted a 3rd kid up off the ground and allowed him to fly off the ground. This is so gross, Oni-san. Despite his words, the little boy couldn't seem happier as he was able to move around the room outside of his wheelchair. His broken legs not keeping him down as he was allowed to walk again, his feet above the ground and, mimicking, walking for him. Riri-chan, let's race. With that, a young girl turned to look at him, and showed that she had her mouth covered in bandaging type, her muffled voice barely making a sound. Naruto used his tongue to allow the boy to race against the girl, the two of them running around the room together. A young boy with a frog-like face in shape, and black hair that covered his right eye, with a wide mouth and larger hands, was slowly crawling on the ceiling like Naruto was, but he wasn't steady as he crawled. You're doing good, Samadare-chan. Once you start sticking to surfaces, you've just got to get used to the feeling. Naruto's words were a little slurred since his tongue was stretched out of his mouth, but other than that, he was speaking normally. The boy crawling had a quirk very similar to his own quirk. Frog. Naruto's toad quirk makes his body overall stronger, more durable, his poison more deadly than most frog quirks out there. The frog quirk gave better leg strength, more jumping power, and a higher resistance to chemicals. Though, as a child, Samadare wouldn't have any of the advantages of his quirk as of yet, since he was still a child, and his quirk immature because of it. You're better at this than my sister. Samadare stated lowly as he watched Naruto walking around the ceiling using only his feet, instead of both his hands and feet like his sister needed to use. She always used her hands and feet to crawl on stuff, otherwise she couldn't stick to anything properly, or she would lose her grip and slip off. It's all about where your center of gravity is. Frogs have more leg strength, but overall, my body is stronger, and it allows me to concentrate more power to my core. Naruto flexed his belly, his shirt having fallen a little to show his abs. The trade-off for reduced leg strength was having more overall strength, meaning he could focus his strength to his belly, and balance himself to stick to stuff without needing his hands to do it. Hey, settle down a little, getting harder to keep a hold on you. Naruto let the kid slip down his arms, and he used his hands to lower them to the ground. He put his hands in the pockets of his medical pajamas. So, what brings you here, kiddo? Naruto asked as Samadare crawled up next to him. Got the flu, having my body flushed. Samadare mentioned with a mutter as he crawled next to Naruto, his face mostly blank, but that was natural. His features were more set than Naruto's own features, which allowed for an even wider display of emotions thank a frog quirk owner. I don't like shots, Samadare stated to Naruto, since he was at the hospital until he flu was completely cured. His older sister was supposed to be picking him up tomorrow, that or his mother, depending on who was free at the time. Samadare lost his grip on the ceiling, and Naruto reached out with his hand, and grabbed him before he fell to the floor on his head. Bring him back to the ceiling, Samadare stuck to it again, and kept his focus on the ceiling. Yeah, they suck big time, I don't like them either. I worry about anyone who likes shots. Still, we need them to keep from getting really sick, and spreading it to others. Think of it like this, every time you get a shot, you're being a real hero to the people that you aren't getting sick in the future. Naruto gently sat down the child his tongue was holding back in his wheelchair when the nurse came to get the child, and the nurse pushed the child out of the room. Bye-bye Oni-san, you better heal up nice and strong kiddo, don't want to see you back here. Naruto called out to the kid with a wide smile. Samadare looked at Naruto with admiration in his eyes. Can you become my real brother? You said something. Naruto asked the little crawler with a grin. I have a sister your age, she goes to UA now, she's going to be a hero. Samadare didn't repeat his words, instead, he mentioned his older sister. She's socially awkward, but really cute, she's got a frog quirk too. Samadare explained to Naruto, who just laughed for a moment. He didn't understand why Samadare was bringing up his sister, but sometimes, the right answer was just to laugh a little. Hey Naruto, having fun there? Sup kids, Mirko here to hang out with you guys. Naruto slipped off the ceiling, and landed on the top of his head out of the pure shock of seeing Mirko and Midnight together coming through the front door. His lost complete even subconscious concentration over his surface sticking, and spewed the air he was breathing out when his skull bashed the floor. Samadare hopped from the ceiling properly, and landed on the floor on all fours. Naruto just sat up and rubbed the top of his head. His eyes met with Mirko's eyes. He seems familiar to me for some reason. He's got really pretty blue eyes though, really familiar to me for some reason. Kind of like Kurama's eyes, if Kurama had a toad quirk and not a poison quirk though. Mirko rubbed her chin in thought, locking eyes with Naruto. The two had the same build, but this boy clearly had a toad quirk, while Kurama's abilities were seemingly completely focused towards creating and using multiple poisons. Oh well, it would seem they just had very similar eyes then, but damn was the resemblance not striking for her. The second she saw his eyes, the first person she had thought of was Kurama. She would have attacked him if she didn't realize their quirks were super different, and this boy seemed to have a more serious personality than the pervy goofball that was her favorite villain Kurama. Sup bun, NY hero Mirko, and Midnight. Naruto almost slipped and called Mirko bun, but he was able to quickly play it off by biting his tongue while he was talking. Naruto waved to the two heroes, and Midnight smiled and waved at Naruto. She was still in costume, so she needed to keep things more professional sadly, otherwise she would have gushed over how cute her son was when looking after the children. He was just loved by children it would seem, because even the boy, Samadare, was patting the top of Naruto's head to try and make his head feel better, even though Naruto was perfectly fine. Years of bonding with children and raising them did wonders for Naruto. Come on Naruto, let's go, Mirko is going to take over for you now. Midnight gestured to the bunny hero, who sent out a peace sign. Naruto just got up, and waved bye to the children. Hope all of you get better. Naruto started to walk to the door, while Mirko walked deeper into the room, and passed by him. Mirko blinked when even her nose was hit by a familiar scent, though the stench of hospital was covering it up a little too. She turned her head to look at Naruto as he passed by her. Mirko tilted her head in confusion. Seriously, other than his quirk not matching up, this guy is like a perfect doppelganger for the bastard. Kurama has an unregistered poison quirk, and this guy has a toad quirk. Mirko couldn't shake the feeling that this boy was off somehow. Kurama, other than changing the color of his poison to change his skin color, didn't show any other real signs. Having a toad quirk, using thick poison to stick to walls didn't count, while this boy didn't seem to hold even a shred of the poison abilities that Kurama had either. So the two of them just couldn't be the same person, despite having the same eyes, scent, and build. Thank God Bun Bun is a dumb bunny, and I make it a point to make everyone think Kurama's quirk is poison. Naruto sighed in relief to himself. It would not do for him to get caught because of something like accidentally running into the hero who knew Kurama the best so far. Hey kid, what is your opinion on super tall ladies with big tits? Midnight gave Mirko a raised eyebrow when she asked Naruto that question, and Naruto turned, blinking as well in confusion. Naruto realized what she was asking moments later, and made sure that it didn't show on his face. Not really my type, I like modest girls. He is for sure not Kurama. Kurama is kind of pervy, and always making jokes about being attracted to certain types of women. Mirko erased all suspicions that this boy was Kurama in an instant with that question. She had a wider smile on her face now that her doubts were gone, and she turned to the children remaining in the room. Naruto didn't let out a sigh, but he felt relieved further. Thank God Mirko wasn't smart. He was really cool, and he had a toad quirk. Did you know people with toad quirks have stronger poisons than us, and they can crawl on walls without using their hands? Oni-san said that he had weaker legs than the frog quirk, but he seemed really strong anyway. This is the most he's talked about somebody. Samadere's mother, Beru Asui, thought to herself as she set down their dinner plates in front of her children. It was a rare chance that she and her husband were both at home, since they worked away from the house, so she decided to make a decent dinner for the family with her own efforts. She had opened a can of worms when she asked Samadere how his stay at the hospital was. A toad quirk, the family father Ganma Asui questioned under his mouth, expressionless face not showing either positive or negative. He was extremely frog-like, though a species of frog that had warts like common toads did, and was brown-skinned with black hair even though he had a frog head. His children all took more after his wife than they did him, which was good, because he inherited far more of the mutation aspect of the frog quirk and less of the actual superpowers. He had the looks of a frog, but very little power behind his looks, so he couldn't help his daughter in her quest to become a hero. Beru gave his elbow a small tap. Didn't you know a man with a toad quirk years ago? Beru asked him to remind him he knew some good people with that quirk. You're talking about Minato, right? I met him in college. He was a genius at everything he did. He graduated from college at the age of 15. Settled down with that strange Uzumaki woman. She was the one who started the orphanage, or the one who started the island for animals with quirks? Ganma asked his wife, since he wasn't friends with either Minato or the Uzumaki woman. He just could not know about Minato, since the man had been one of the world's finest geniuses, having graduated college at an insane age. His toad quirk made him smarter. Tsuyu Asui, the oldest child, another froggy in the family, asked as she sat down between her siblings. Samadere and the 6-year-old Satsuki. Real toads are actually very intelligent, though, not all people with a toad quirk inherit this little factor. I don't know if Minato inherited his toad quirk's intelligence boast, or was just a genius. But the boy could spend one night studying anything, and he would be an expert in the morning. The boy had so much more potential than all of his peers, but he wasted it. He's just another tale of a man who was led down the wrong path. Ganma explained to his daughter, since he didn't want her to get the idea that he knew everything about Minato, or was even friends with the guy. He only knew what everyone else who went to school with the guy knew, maybe a little more because he made the effort to try and hear some extra rumors. Oni-san didn't seem super smart, but he was really fun, and he helped me learn to crawl on the ceiling better. Samadere said to Satsuki, not paying a lot of attention to his parents, while his younger sister listened to him. Minato had a beautiful song though, of all the men with toad quirks, I do remember him having an unnaturally beautiful voice. Beru was remembering Minato, with her husband nodding slightly. Right, he always did have that habit of doing that when he was studying really hard. That song really was a nice thing to fall asleep to in the dorms. Ganma remembered that too. Suyu just put a finger to her lower lip. You mean like how I say ribbit sometimes, and what does a song have to do with a toad quirk? Suyu asked with a slightly confused tone. At least her family could tell she was confused, since it didn't show on her face. He helped a kid in a wheelchair play tag. Well, unlike us girls, men with frog and toad quirks are able to produce real toad-frog sounds, since in nature, the females don't really make noise. People with our type of quirk, the men, can combine their human vocal cords with their quirk and produce a blend between the beauty of the mating call, with the range of a human. Beru explained for her daughter, and she turned to her husband. Show her dear. ... With all this pollen in the air, my throat has been awfully scratchy, not to mention my voice isn't suited for it. Ganma politely refused for decent reasons. The song mixed the human vocal cords with the frog-toad ones, meaning both the human and frog. For him, vocal cords needed to be beautiful for singing and able to sync up. His own song was put to shame by Minato's own song. Just got off work too, need to be relaxed. Suyu just nodded in acceptance. With midnight. Homework. I hated it as a student, and I hate it as a teacher. Still, hard to believe there are students this stupid too. Nimari said mostly to herself, finished grading all of the homework she had to deal with. She was sitting at the kitchen table, in just a sweater and her panties, glasses on her face with her hair set back, legs curled up into her chest. I swear, a good cup of tea, and I'll be out for the night, Nimari stopped what she was doing when she heard something coming from the hallway. It was beautiful, it was inhuman and human. Instantly, her mind started to go a little blank as she felt herself starting to drift off into a pleasurable daze. It was hypnotizing in how it drew her stressed mind in, and dropped her guard. Her eyes struggled to stay open as she hugged her knees and started to relax herself into the sound. Words didn't register in her mind, she didn't know what the lyrics were, and she couldn't tell you a single word she was wearing. There were words to the song, and the words were in Japanese, so naturally, by all means, she should be able to understand the song being sung. Still though, it was like there was such an inhuman quality about the song, that her mind just couldn't understand the lyrics. I could listen to this forever. Naruto should just sit down and relax like this now, since he has school tomorrow. Nimari thought to herself as she saw Naruto walking down the hallway, towards the fridge, with a medical mask still on his face, seeing as he was still sick, just well enough to leave the hospital. Her ears sort of tracked the source of the sound move from the hallway, to the front of the fridge, where Naruto was standing right now. Strange. It didn't matter though, this song was putting her to sleep. The longer it went on, the less she found herself caring about anything. She just wanted to slowly bask in the sounds filling her ears, slowly, as all other sounds in the world were drowned out. Nimari snapped away when the song ended. Naruto was drinking some cold tea from the fridge, having started to drink at the exact same moment that the voice stopped singing. Nimari started to look around to try and figure out what the hell just happened to her, quickly rubbing her tired eyes when she realized that she had nearly been put to sleep. Did you hear that, Naruto? Naruto finished drinking, before he looked towards Nimari with a dull face. Hear what? Naruto asked her, since he didn't hear anything unusual. Closing the fridge, Naruto started to walk back to his room. The sound started to play again, and Namori's eyes widened when she realized where the sound was coming from. Asui family. Several teachers had to put an end to that though, since while the song he made came from his toad quirk, with his human vocal cords, it affected humans too. Minato didn't even know he was doing it, but he was causing people to become attached to him, because his song would directly affect people's brains. Ganma tapped the side of his head where his brain was. Beru looked at him with some confusion, since she didn't know this part of the story, not that they ever spent time talking about Minato before now. They just both knew who he was, so they could both share facts about him. Really now? Yes, since most men born with animal mutation quirks look like the animals they represent and less human, Our vocal cords are more similar to the animal mutation. Minato looked extremely human, so his toad quirk let him use toad calls, and it mixed with his human chords to be able to affect other humans. His singing caused people's brains to start to produce hormones, so Minato was told by the professors to stop singing. His music could cause people to become emotionally attached to him, and even fall in love with him. Ganma explained that part of the story to his surprised wife. Even years later, she was still a slight victim to the attachment effect, since she still longed to hear his voice again singing. Minato had become forbidden from singing in public places, since his song affected different people differently as well. Not everyone reacted exactly the same, but one of the basics was the fact that almost everyone who heard his voice was put into an almost hypnotic state. Oni-san is even better than Oni-chan at ceiling walking. While the adults and Tsuyu were having this conversation, the younger children were still talking about the boy that Samadare met at the hospital. Cool, he's going to be attending UA's General Studies course, Class C, he said. I asked him why he didn't want to be a hero, and he just mentioned he had something way cooler for his future. Back with Naruto. Naruto sang to himself as he thought about how he was going to make going to UA turn into something he could take advantage of. If he wanted to start his own orphanage to make up for the one that he lost, then he needed to graduate UA and build himself up as a reliable person. Still, he couldn't neglect to take his villain duties seriously either. He needed to find a way to balance his student life with his villain life, and for that he would need to contact Pop Step some more to set up some alibis ahead of time. Hey Naruto. Naruto stopped singing when he saw Nimari outside his room, looking through a crack between the doorframe and the door. It's getting pretty late, and so maybe you should go to sleep. If you want to grow taller, you'll need your sleep. Nimari said with a forced smile on her face. As much as she wanted to listen to his singing some more, she knew that he would be up all night if she didn't tell this to him. Also, your singing is making me pretty tired, so I'm going to sleep too. Good night. Naruto blinked and scratched the side of his head. Whoops, he was so used to singing to the orphans to help them sleep, that he must have been doing it without thinking about it. He didn't know why, but whenever he sang, people would enter a daze or fall asleep. The children would just fall asleep, while the caretakers who overheard him would enter a daze, and become really uncomfortable when he stopped singing. Night. Naruto wasn't going to say, good night, but he just waved to her, and started to get ready for bed. UA didn't know it, but they were going to take his villain career to the next level. This school is kind of boring. It's just like a normal school when you aren't taking the special classes. Naruto walked through the halls of UA just like any of the other students. Naruto had to grin to himself though when once more the fact that he was a villain, walking the halls of the world's best hero academy, and nobody was chasing him in the slightest. Naruto had already went through 4 of his classes, and he would be going to the lunch room with the rest of the students at the school. Well, that was the normal thing to do. Naruto gained a glint in his eye though, because he had different plans for what he was going to do during lunch. Naruto took a turn and glanced around. Seeing that nobody was paying attention, he slipped into the woman's bathroom. This was required for his plan to work before he slipped into a stall. He opened his backpack, and glanced at his mask inside. In the lunchroom 10 minutes later. So, pretty cool that we have All Might as a teacher, right? I mean, he doesn't seem like the type that would have just lost to Kurama, right? Ochako mentioned as she sat with a few of the other girls in their class. She wanted to get their opinion on the newest S-rank villain, the one who took down the entire top 10 heroes with his stealthy poison. She didn't know what to think about a villain being alive that could take out anyone, at any time, and come from anywhere. There was a silence for a moment as a few of her classmates put some thought into what she was mentioning. I think he's really cool. Other than the villain thing, he just seems like he's trying to have fun with the heroes. He did save that guy's life, and got hit by a truck and a car doing it right. Mina mentioned with a giant grin. She thought that guy was really cool. Other than the villain fact, she was pretty sure he was a good guy underneath all of that poison. Momo just went silent and nodded her head, since she had been interrupted, and she looked at Tsuyu, Juro, and the invisible Toru. There wasn't much to look at in the case of the last girl, but it was just the girls eating together. Nobody seemed like they were going to interrupt her again. Right. Ochako pointed to Mina with a grin, since she agreed with that thought, though Kurama was still a scary villain. The entire lunchroom went silent actually. Suyu froze and looked next to her, her eyes widening in shock, but the rest of the people sitting at the table didn't notice what she had noticed. He seems a little pervy though, the way he always teases the heroines and takes clothes. Toru mentioned with a shiver, the thought of being stripped naked and left to dry was a humiliating thought. The fact that she was invisible completely slipped her mind though, and her words seemed to echo even more considering how strangely silent the entire lunchroom was being. Yeah, he's a little pervy, but have you seen how those ladies dress? Pretty sure a lot of heroines are secretly exhibitionists, you know. I can agree with that a lit. Jiro looked next to her at the person who said that, and she froze like everyone else when she saw Kurama sitting down between her and Suyu. When she froze, that alerted the rest of the table to the fact that something was wrong. Coo. Naruto waved a hand. With a tight sexy body like yours, I can't wait to see what hero uniform I can take from you, sweetheart. Naruto openly flirted with the girl, making finger guns and everything. All of the girls at the table jumped up in unison. Kurama, the world's hardest to catch villain has arrived, any of you guys want to take a shot at me? Naruto asked them all as he bowed deeply, jumping to stand on the table. Naruto had a grin on under his mask, he would be showing off all of his teeth were it not for the mask. Somebody call All Might, in the teacher's lounge. He got all of us. Again, how the hell did Kurama even break into the school? All Might said as he laid face down on the ground, having collapsed next to his poisoned lunch. All of the other teachers had collapsed as well around him. None of them had heard any of the school's alarms going off that would have alerted them to the fact the school had been broken into, which was freaky considering the fact that they had all been poisoned by the infamous Kurama. Can any of you move yet? Nope, can't. GRRRAAARFGRRRROWL. The rest of the teachers that had collapsed in the room were giving likewise statements of their inability to so much as move. More humiliating was the fact that Kurama had already stolen part of their uniforms, and had stolen All Might's other hair horn, now owning a matching pair of them. In the lunchroom, any challengers? Come on now. I know some of you want a chance at fame. Naruto called out as student after student started to pass out from his poison. Every student that had taken even a single bite of their lunch school provided had taken his poison to the tongue, and every student that hadn't, had been secretly touched by him as he made his way to the last table to sit down. In moments, all but one student had passed out cold from what he had done, and Naruto was surrounded by a lunchroom filled with knocked out students. Naruto glanced down at Suyu with a raised eyebrow. She looked like Samadare, so she had a frog quirk too, which meant she had a powerful ability to resist his poison. All of her friends had passed out, but instead of attack him, she was crouched on the ground and ready to just defend herself and those that might be attacked. She was starting to sweat nervously though. Naruto just put his hands in his pockets and jumped off the table. Suyu flinched. He really is Kurama. These underhanded tactics, poisoning the school's lunch supply, and taking out the teachers before they could fight back. Suyu thought as her mind raced, unable to think of anything that could protect all of the students. Naruto sighed. I don't hit girls, and I've never really been in a real fight, so could you just leave? I'm not going to actually hurt anyone, just play a small prank while everyone is knocked out. Naruto requested as he looked down at her. He had no plans on actually doing anything evil, other than the poison thing. Suyu didn't budge. His statement actually filled her with confidence in her chances to win, since his poison didn't seem to have much of an effect on her. She tightened up her tongue in her mouth, and with a quick strike, faster than a normal person could react, she shot her tongue at him. He caught it. Good thing I can use my tongue like this too, or I wouldn't have known she was going to do it. Lethal dose it is then. Naruto thought as a small amount of white liquid dripped out of his sweat glands on his hand, and touched her tongue. Naruto waited until a lethal dose was on her tongue, before he let go of it and it shot back into her mouth. With how resistant she was to his poison, going fully lethal was what was required to knock her out. Suyu had seen what had come out of his hand, but by the time she had registered what she had seen, she had already passed out as well. -2 hours later. Well, He didn't steal any of their clothes at least. Midnight used All Might as a crutch, barely able to move her legs as she walked into the lunchroom with all of the other teachers who were able to move. She was greeted with the weird scene of all of the students in the lunchroom on the ground, unable to move. The other teachers quickly went to search the rest of the school. All of the students were cross-dressing. Kurama, the odd villain, had stripped all of the boys and girls naked, and switched their clothes with a different student. All of the boys were wearing the girls' uniforms, and all of the girls were wearing the boys' uniforms. Well, at least I'm not the only one. Naruto, you're okay. Midnight rushed out of All Might's grasp and hugged onto Naruto when she saw he was up and walking on his own. I was worried, with you just getting out of the hospital, I thought you would, he got you too. Midnight looked at Naruto, and she saw that he was wearing a girl's uniform that was a little too big for him. Naruto didn't fight the hug, he just acted like he was having trouble standing up, and didn't have the energy to resist her. I've got a high resistance to poison because of my quirk, so I woke up quickly. He got me in the boys' bathroom, and when I woke up I was in the girls' bathroom wearing this. Naruto mentioned as he looked down at the uniform he was wearing. Naruto had taken the uniform from the black-haired girl who had been sitting at the same table as Suyu, the one with the larger figure. Took a bit of effort to work up the courage to leave the bathroom, glad to see that I'm not alone though. Makes it a bit easier to laugh this off. Naruto gave a small chuckle of awkwardness that actually convinced both of the heroes in front of him. Did he hurt? When Midnight and All Might went to check on the rest of the students, Naruto grinned to himself and leaned forward. His prank had gone off perfectly. Nothing. So, what Kurama did isn't going to be on the news. Naruto asked Nimari as he looked at her watching television. It had been a day since his prank, or rather the next day, and he was surprised that what he had done hadn't been giant news out of this point. He had unleashed a massive prank on the entirety of the UA school and all of the teacher heroes present. While he was slightly worried about putting a target on his back, with how big that target was already, nothing was going to make it that much bigger. Nimari looked surprised to see him talking to her of his own free will, or rather, him starting the conversation. Well, the other teachers at UA thought it would be best to keep this event under wraps. Since all of the cameras inside of the school had been destroyed, Nimari spoke, and Naruto nodded his head. He had destroyed any camera that could have caught sight of him, and used his camo ability from his toad quirk to make sure the cameras didn't see Kurama anyway. Erasing the evidence from the memory was as easy as a quick Google search on his phone, and all the evidence that could link Naruto and Kurama together was gone. And we still don't know how he got into the school, we want to avoid a panic. Nimari explained to him when he sat down. She stood up to start making breakfast, since for once, he was actually sitting down at the table with her. You don't want UA's reputation to be ruined either, right? Naruto questioned her with a knowing smirk. She shook her head. Honestly, if this was some 2-bit villain breaking into UA and doing this, then maybe. But considering it was Kurama, who took down the entire top 10, including All Might himself. Kurama being capable of taking down UA is something the public won't be surprised or shocked over. Nimari reluctantly admitted to the fact. Kurama was perhaps the only known villain that could do this, and nobody would be shocked over it anymore. After his big stunt of taking down the top 10, he had become a very controversial topic for a lot of people. A villain that could escape any hero, who had taken down the best of the best, was a villain that was extremely dangerous and worrying. At the same time, the villain was Kurama, who had shown off many times the fact he meant no true harm to anyone, had never been violent once, and had risked his own life to save a person. Many people were convinced that Kurama would never actually hurt anyone, he just wanted to have fun, but there were others that believed a villain being this good at taking down heroes couldn't be allowed to stay. He's really become popular, Naruto muttered with a frown as he looked at the TV screen. Behold, the newest, off-the-line, Kurama figure, and we are premiering them here first. Figures and toys of me, that's so. Naruto didn't know what to think when he saw the news reporter in the toy store, going down the line of hero and villain toys, and showing off the newest and more expensive-looking toys there. So, what side of the argument are you on? Naruto asked Nimari, and she looked conflicted. I think Kurama is good for society as a whole. Nimari reluctantly was truthful with this one. Every time Kurama humiliates a hero, their public image falls a little, and to regain their image, the heroes he defeats were forced to work even harder to make up for the loss. While more criminals are trying to imitate Kurama, crime rates overall are actually dropping. Nimari was reluctant to admit this for that very reason. Kurama's actions were making heroes better heroes by forcing them to try and save face, by becoming even more active in the community. It was an unintended side effect of his crimes, but the fact remains that if Kurama wasn't such a friendly villain, then the heroes he went after would be dead, and the public would be terrified, inciting panic. Naruto didn't understand. I, and several other heroes, believe that Kurama is wasting his potential. He seems like a good guy at heart. I would even say, lonely. Nimari explained her thoughts on it a little. Nobody really knew what they wanted done with Kurama anymore. The public, the majority of the public, adored the villain for his fun ways, and the fact that he never really did anything really evil. He was just, for them, a way for them to spice up their lives with good, clean entertainment. Naruto scowled. Lonely? He doesn't seem lonely to me. Naruto spoke under his breath with his scowl growing unpleasant. Nimari gave him a concerned look when she saw his mood was changing, but she didn't directly comment on him. She didn't argue with him either. What does he seem like to you then? Since you asked, what do you think about Kurama? Nimari wanted to hear Naruto talk about his opinion, since he never really gave her his thoughts on this stuff. She put breakfast in front of the two of them, and sat down across from him. I don't know. You don't know. Nimari was a little curious about how Naruto didn't seem to know what he thought about Kurama. Well, I guess you're conflicted like a lot of people then, with good reason. The guy did dress you in women's clothes that were too big for you. Nimari sympathized with him on that at least. Momo, a girl in the hero course, was a tall girl with large breasts and wide hips, and it was her clothes that Naruto had been forced to wear. She had height on him, and her figure made her clothes big on him. Being smaller than a girl, for any guy, could be a little humiliating. At least, that was what she thought about why Naruto might not feel strongly about Kurama. Naruto gave her a small glare for that. I'm just 15, I have a lot of room to grow, and my father was tall. Naruto told her quickly, and she raised her hands up in surrender. Okay, so she touched a button there. Gotcha. So, changing the topic. How was your first day at UA, not counting what happened? Did you like the school or make any friends? Nimari only got to teach the history and art classes, so she didn't get to see a lot of Naruto during the school hours. She had seen he wasn't great with art, and his grasp on history was a little odd. He seemed to have trouble learning the same way that other students learned, so she was going to have to try and work with him on that personally. Thankfully, as his mother, she was in the perfect position to offer him help after school, and try and find out why he seemed to have problems. She had been allowed to look at his middle school records, and she saw that his grades had always been low. Which was odd, because he actually seemed very cunning, and that he had a good head on his shoulders. I met a guy that was sitting alone, he's got a villain-like quirk, and people were avoiding him. I want to try and get closer to him. He looks like he could use a friend. Naruto mentioned, since he had seen a guy sitting alone, and asked some other students about him. The guy tried and failed to get into the hero course because of his quirk, and though Naruto didn't want to be a hero, he completely understood what the guy was going through. Having your dreams taken away was rough. Nimari smiled wide. Oh, friendships between men can just be the best of things. Men who prefer the company of women are fine, but having a male friend you can be yourself with is just good for you. I say you should go for it, try and make friends with him. Nimari encouraged his plans with an open mind. Naruto just played with the food in front of him, before silently eating, not sure what else he could say. Nimari just kept smiling though. Do you hate villains? Naruto asked Nimari after a few moments thought. I can't say I hate them. There are a good number of villains out there who just need help. There are some really bad people I don't like, and it's my job to take all of them down. But when I can I do try and help the ones I feel can turn their life around. Heroes aren't here to hurt people, we're here to help them. Nimari believed that she put her thoughts into proper words there, or at least explained them well enough for him to understand. You know, this is the nicest conversation we've had. I hope we can have more like it. Nimari added that on, and Naruto's face stayed flat and emotionless at that. Naruto sighed. I don't hate you. Naruto was forced to admit to her. He didn't like her, and he did not see her as his mother, but he was going to have to admit that he didn't hate her as a person. By the way she was talking, she seemed like a genuinely good person. After spending time with her, he could tell that she really did not mean to force the adoption on him the way she did. She made a mistake, and she really did feel sorry about how she took something dear away from him. She was not a bad person though, and the more time he spent with her, the more he was forced to admit it. Nimari just smiled. Thank you, and for what it's worth, I'm going to be the best mother I can be. You're already dear to me. Nimari spoke honestly as well. She didn't have him in her life long, but living with him, and trying to bond with him. And when he got really sick she practically felt her heart try and rip itself out of her chest to be with him. Having a child had awakened her inner maternal instincts, even if it wasn't through birth. You're my child now, Naruto. Even though you don't hate me, you're angry with me though. I love you, and I hope you'll come to love me one day too. Nimari watched as Naruto started to more quickly finish his breakfast, and how he kept his face flat without showing anything on it. For her at least, the silence was more comfortable than it usually was. Naruto seemed in thought though. Later that day. Come on Bun, I'm honestly flattered. Naruto allowed himself to relax as he dodged Mirko rather easily enough, since as she got used to the way he dodged, he was also getting used to her fighting style. Phones were out recording them, and Mirko was attacking with a more passion than normally as she tried to land a clean hit on him. She was grinning from ear to ear, having yet another chance to take this villain out was a blessing for her. Heard what you did, bet you got an eyeful. Mirko taunted him. Right. He had seen every female and male student of UA without their clothes on when he was switching them around. He had used the school's copier to leave notes in all of the students' clothes that he didn't do anything perverted to their bodies. The fact remains that he had seen all of the students in the nude though, and thinking on that would usually be enough to get a blush on his cheeks. Do I hear a hint of jealousy in your voice, Bun? Should I strip you naked too? Naruto asked her, and he ducked underneath a 100% power kick that she threw, one that unleashed a pretty strong shockwave. That one would have really hurt if it had actually hit him. Thankfully, he knew the way his body moved so well at this point, he could predict what she would do with his brain tied behind his back to make it fair. Ooh, don't worry Bun, your sexy thighs are the only ones I want trying to choke me. Those girls don't have nothing on you. Naruto ran his hand up her leg while she was pulling it back. You can put your hands all over them once I've beaten you. Mirko jumped up and tried to get him with a spin kick. Mirko's phone rang, and she stopped her kick. Where the hell do you hero women even keep those phones? Naruto asked when he saw her pull out her phone, and he tried to see where she pulled it from. She raised her hand up to her lips, and shushed him before he could say much else. Did you just shush me? Naruto asked with some shock. She shushed him again. Mirko here. Bank robbery a few minutes away, they hijacked a bus. I'm on it. Mirko shouted over the phone at the end. She ended the phone call, before she turned towards Naruto. Sorry Kurama, gotta take care of this. Chasing you will give more fame, but some real criminals are doing something. Mirko put her hands together in apology. She hated to end their chase before one of them won, but when lives were in danger, she had to go and take care of it. She abandoned Naruto and jumped in the general direction of where the other crime was taking place. Catching him was something that would bring fame to whatever hero managed it, but when lives were at stake, those lives would always take priority. Naruto put his hands in his pockets, with a frown on under his mask. Well now, Naruto jumped high into the air and followed after Mirko, unable to just let this one slide just like that. Jumping side by side with her, she glanced to her side, and shrugged her shoulders. You know, people can't just stop chasing me. I've got a reputation to uphold. Inside the getaway bus. Now, everyone stay down. Keep her hands on her heads, and this won't turn bloody. Call it a stereotype, but the crime was being committed by 3 men, all of them hiding their features with black masks and black sweaters as well. They had dangerous-looking, and large, guns that took 2 hands to properly hold. Guns capable of easily wiping out all of the people on the bus in a few seconds flat. So, we still using code names, also. Yes, we are still using code names. I'm Hawk, you're Eagle, and he is Owl. Hawk stated as he gestured to Eagle and Owl in turn, since they seemed to have forgotten the important parts of the heist. This would be the last time he allied himself with quirkless newbies like this. He was quirkless too, but at least he was a pro when it came to escaping with the money. What hero is following us? Ingenium, MT, Lady and Kamui Woods were recently in this area. You two remembered to warn the police that we would shoot the passengers on hero sighting, right? Were you supposed to? Idiots, never working with you two again. Hawk spoke as he palmed his forehead, and he glanced out of the side of his eye, and saw a passenger about to reach down. Shooting out the window above their head, there were screams of panic throughout the bus, and the passenger's hands went up to his head. Eagle, do you have sights on any heroes? Hawk asked as he looked back towards the front of the bus, and he saw that Eagle was downed. Owl was still driving the bus, but Eagle down on the ground, twitching with foam coming from his mouth, clawing at his own throat, his eyes darting around like crazy. He gargled on the foam in his mouth, before his eyes started to roll up into his head, and he passed out in a horrifyingly silent way. Holy shit, Eagle is ding. I knew he liked drugs, but I didn't realize he did them before the job. Owl glanced back and saw his buddy collapsed on the ground. Hawk wasn't as stupid. Okay, show yourself, hero. Show yourself or I start shooting, starting with the kids, then the women, finally the men. Hawk shouted out to the entire bus, and he shot around into the roof of the bus to prove a point. He felt a finger touch the back of his neck. Snapping around, he saw that he was face to face with Kurama, another villain, and he relaxed when he realized it wasn't a hero. A fellow villain, and a pro at that, was always a welcome change to the idiots he was working with. Holy shit, it's Kurama, the unstoppable hero beating machine. We're going to totally get away with things now. Thank you, Total Crime Newbie, for the ever so kind introduction. Yes, it is I, the enemy of the people, nasty villain of far renown, and expert of all things poison, the master thief Kurama. Naruto performed a bow towards everyone in the bus. Naruto walked to the front of the bus, before he tapped his finger against the top of Owl's hand. Owl collapsed, and Naruto grabbed the steering wheel. Play music. Higurashi no Naku Koro ni Ost, Senku. You're here to stop us. If pull this bus over, I'm going to open fire. Hawk shouted out when he realized he was not in the presence of an ally. Naruto sat down in driver's seat as Owl started to twitch on the ground, and took off the real driver's hat from where he was tied up. He grabbed the walkie-talkie. Hello everyone, my name is Kurama, and I'll be your tour guide on this poisonous trip. The first stage in my special poison is paralysis. Naruto started to explain the steps. Hawk froze when he realized he couldn't move his arms, and the gun fell out of his hands. Realizing that he had been poisoned when Kurama had touched him, he could do nothing but fall to the ground. Stage 2 of this poison is your sense of reality starting to fade, as you hallucinate, seeing things that aren't there. The world started to vanish, and it was replaced by horrifying shapes and colors, the flames of hell itself burning around him. Hawk was forced to watch as his arms were melted off by the fires, and grew back, and were melted off again. His hair was grabbed, and his head jerked so that he was looking into Kurama's yellow eyes, which were narrowed dangerously. Stage 3 is when you realize that you just fucked up, threatening a child's life in front of me, and beg for mercy before you start to feel. Please, make it stop. Stage 4, you feel utter agony, as every nerve in your body sends pain signals straight to your brain, making you feel like your entire body is on fire, and no water in the world is cold enough to put you out. Just like Kurama spoke, Hawk's eyes started to roll back into his head as he gave out a silent scream of agony. His entire body feeling just like it was explained, like a fire had overtaken every limb in his insides. Naruto stood up. He had already pulled the bus to a stop when Hawk had collapsed. There was silence as Hawk twitched and suffered for a few moments which would feel like eternity for the poisoned man, before finally passing out and ending his own suffering. Naruto leaned down to the man, even though he was passed out, and whispered into his ear. Nobody would ever hear this, but it needed to be said. You almost killed children, and turned the children of these people into orphans. Consider yourself lucky. Next time I catch you, you won't wake up, ever. With that said, Naruto stood up and waved to everyone on the bus, who were cheering him. He's a hero. Now, I'm no hero. I'm just your friendly neighborhood Penai Parker. Naruto even made a cute pose to go with the statement, before he laughed at his own joke. You see, this is the part when a giant robot crashes next to the bus, and I make my escape in a robot. This would be that part, but this isn't Marvel, so instead, I'm just going to have to make my wonderful villain escape. Naruto exclaimed loudly to everyone who could hear him. Naruto jumped out of the bus just as Mirko came crashing through the window. You bastard, how dare you paralysis me? It is one thing to steal my clothes and my heart, but stealing my job, you've crossed the line, little man. I'm the hero, you're the villain, and I'm going to, oh shit. Mirko realized not only was Naruto not in the bus anymore, but people were recording her with their phones, and a news reporter was getting on the bus. They had just recorded her admitting to something that was very bad for her. Mirko looked down on the floor, and saw a piece of paper. For leaving me behind earlier, I leave you with this mess to clean up. Any humiliation you face, will be your fault, so don't go saying anything I wouldn't say. Love, your sexy little villain Kurama. Son of a bitch, he played me like a fiddle. I fucking love that man. Mirko growled to herself when she realized this was the ass she was in love with. Mirko, do you have any comments about your relationship with Kurama? Damn, did that villain know how to play people. With Naruto later. Sup Pop, you busy today? Naruto asked as he jumped in through Pop Step's home window, and landed on her bed without a worry in the world. She yelped from her study desk, and stopped doing her homework. Naruto pulled his mask down, and the same with his hoodie, so that his face was revealed. Whoops, you're out of costume, you got any plans for today Kazuho? Naruto asked her with her real name, and she turned to face him, holding her chest. He nearly gave her a heart attack. The fuck is wrong with you Kazuho stopped herself. The fuck is wrong with you Naruto? Yes, I'm super busy, I've got a buttload of homework. Are we talking your definition of buttload, or mine, because you have plenty of ass to go around? Sorry, still in Kurama mode. Naruto mentioned when she threw a pillow at him. It took him a minute to stop making pervy jokes, since part of his Kurama persona was making perverse jokes. She threw another pillow at him, and he let it hit him in the face. Okay, I get it. Anyway, wanna hold a concert tonight? Naruto asked her with a grin on his face. Beating Mirko was putting him in a good mood. Can't, I've got homework, and a lot of it. As much as I want to do that, I have to make my parents happy, or they will ground me. Kazuho stated to him, and Naruto's smile vanished from his face. Right, she had parents that she had to please. Naruto's smile returned to his face as he shrugged and walked backwards towards the window, putting his hoodie and mask back on. If he couldn't do something with Kazuho because of her homework, then he would just go and find a hero he could have some more fun with or something. He needed to take his mind off of family stuff anyway. See y'all later then Pop, text me later, and when you do, be sure to do something for me. Naruto sat on the edge of the window, and started to lean backwards. Send nudes. Perv. Naruto backflipped out of the window when a pillow went flying after him, a grin on his face under his mask. He had to wonder what hero he was going to mess with this time, since not a lot of heroes in this area were anything to write home about. Naruto jumped and landed on a house rooftop, before he started to hop from roof to roof with little difficulty. Oh, he had the perfect target. All Might headquarters. Ah, I hope that young Midoriya doesn't have to go through this much of the hassle I do when he becomes great. All Might stated as he went towards the mini fridge in his office, hidden under his desk. He opened it up, and grabbed a fresh new jug of milk. He sat back up in his desk, and was about to pour himself a glass of milk. Before that though, All Might pulled out a small poison detector that he just bought this morning, and placed it into the milk jug. Since Kurama's poison couldn't be detected through taste alone in its lower doses, and since the human body had trouble creating antibodies to poisons, he needed to be extra sure this milk wasn't poisoned. Kurama's poison was only ever used against heroes in non-lethal doses, meaning that Kurama could always change the dosage to match any resistance that they could form to it. All Might smiled widely as the poison detector went off, and shined a green light, showing there was no poison in the milk. Ah, a nice glass of cold milk, just a wonderful way to relax. All Might poured himself a cup of milk, and swallowed large mouthfuls of it. Oh, you didn't drink that milk, did you, Kurama? All Might super quickly entered his usual large, muscular form in the blink of an eye, when Kurama made himself known, sitting on the ceiling with a grin visible under his mask. Naruto just waved down at All Might, and before the man could throw so much as a punch, he collapsed down to his knees as his body became skeletal and super skinny, his muscles vanishing as quickly as they appeared. Naruto chuckled to himself as he landed on All Might's desk, and picked up the glass of milk, finishing off the milk himself, drinking it through his mask. Ah, milk, a great way to relax after beating the #1 hero for the third time. Naruto put the cup down upside down on All Might's desk. But the milk didn't have any poison in it. All Might didn't fret about Kurama doing anything really evil. Other than being a prankster, he seemed just like a kid that wanted attention. All Might wasn't worried about his true form being seen either, since this was the third time that Kurama had seen this form, and his secret was still not known to the public. Kurama never told anyone, so it was safe to assume he had no plans. I made sure to buy a poison detector so that this doesn't happen anymore. Naruto wiped his finger around the edge of the glass. Didn't poison the milk though, I poisoned the rim, so when your lips touched it, you got poisoned. You've got a lot of nice stuff here, what do you think I should make a trophy? Naruto got off of his desk and started to walk around the room with his hands behind his back, looking at the hero suits that were hung up on the wall. Naruto looked at a framed photo that was sitting there as well. So this is what young Might looks like. This woman is pretty, and she's got a nice smile. My master, a wonderful hero, just like you could be if you applied yourself. All Might spoke from his position on the floor. Nope, still couldn't move, despite trying to. Not interested in hero stuff. Hero beats the villain and saves the day, you hear a ton of stories about that. What about a villain who doesn't lose, and makes fun of people? Now that is a fun story to see in the news. Naruto stated as he grabbed one of the costumes from the wall, and held it up to All Might. You mind if I take this? Will me saying yes change anything? I mean, I'm taking it either way. Naruto admitted as he started to fold it up and put it into his backpack. He just thought he would be formal and ask, since All Might was a great hero. So, how is the school taking my little prank? Naruto asked as he packed up what he was taking, and went over to put the milk jug up for All Might. He didn't want it to get warm after all, room temp milk was gross. All Might was sure this was the weirdest conversation he would ever have with a villain. Wondering how you entered the school, and were able to destroy the cameras. Oh, that was easy. You've got a traitor in Class 1A, your traitor was more than happy to sneak me into the school and tell me where your cameras were. Naruto lied with extreme ease, and he did it in a way that left no doubt that he was telling the truth. All Might froze up when he heard that there was a traitor among the students, and the way he froze up showed Naruto that his lie had been believed. Naruto turned to hide the grin on his masked face. Now, whenever Kurama pulled a prank on the school would investigate one of the hero students. That would take the pressure off of him, considering he already created an alibi for himself anyway. Why are you telling me about a traitor? All Might asked with a frown on his face. Naruto turned to look All Might in the eyes. Because, isn't it really fun that I know who the traitor is, and you don't? Now, you know about a traitor, and I get to laugh that you have no clue who it is. My friend is a really good spy, so even if you investigate, you won't find a thing, funny huh? Naruto asked as he tapped All Might's forehead, and he increased the poison dosage a little, since he noticed All Might regain some use of his fingers. All Might cursed under his breath when his ability to move was stripped from him again. You're so talented. What would your parents say if they learned this is how you use your talents? Mood. Killed. What is with everyone and parents today? Naruto stopped having fun and walked over towards the window, opening it up and jumping out without any hesitation. He was getting a little sick of being reminded of parentage today. Naruto felt the wind rush over him as he free fell. He might as well make his way home, since it wasn't like there was much else he could do today. Today was less fun than he wanted his first day off of school to be. Naruto slowed his fall by touching the side of the building, before he gently landed on the concrete sidewalk. People around were shocked when they saw him land, but he jumped onto the nearest moving car and started to surf on the traffic without much of a thought on where he was going to go next. Villain Kurama. Oh, sup Ingenium, going for a run? Naruto asked when he saw Ingenium running next to the car he was riding on top of. He hadn't committed a crime in this area to get a hero called on him. Well, nobody would have known about the All Might thing just yet. Sorry, I can't play around with you. There is motorcycle gang terrorizing the elderly home. Have a pleasant day though. With that, Ingenium started to run on his way in front of the car, without a second's delay. Naruto frowned when he realized that this was the third counting All Might, that kind of blew him off today. All Might didn't have the choice, but the way he was talked to during that, suggested that All Might didn't consider him to be a serious villain. Naruto laid down on top of the car when he realized that everyone was, kind of used to him. At least the heroes were mostly used to him at this point, the ones that regularly dealt with him. Bullshit. Just because I don't threaten innocent lives, doesn't make me any less of a villain than those other guys. Naruto thought to himself with frustration. Do you mind signing this for me? A teenage boy shouted as he stuck his head out of the car and showed a notebook to him. Naruto grabbed it and signed it, before handing it back to the boy. Naruto got up, and jumped off of the car, before landing on top of a truck that was changing into a different direction. Naruto perked up when he heard the loud flapping of wings, and saw Yukio. Naruto jumped after her, going from car to car quickly, until he caught up with her and jumped higher. Landing on top of her neck, she blinked and turned her long neck back to face him. Kurama, sorry, but I don't have time to chase you, just go and return whatever you stole, okay? Ah, not going to chase your favorite villain. I could really use another trophy from you, Miss Number 9. Naruto mocked her a little, and she just shook her head and neck, trying to knock him off of her. Naruto ended up just letting go of her, and landing on the ground in a park. I'll chase you when I have free time, so behave yourself. God, it's like nobody has any time today. I might as well go mess with Endeavor or something, he's a hoot to mess with. Naruto would have to travel a bit to go to where Endeavor was located, but at least he was sure he would get Endeavor to chase him easily enough. Naruto sighed to himself. Naruto blinked when he noticed something out of the corner of his eye. Looking towards the alley, Naruto walked. He could have sworn he felt a shiver go down his spine, and see somebody hiding in the alley. Psst! Over here. Naruto saw a petite hand gesturing for him behind one of the turns in the alley, and Naruto knew it would be a bad idea for him to go and follow where the hand was pointing to. It was starting to get dark, and a lot of weirdos started to come out at this time. Now, it was an extremely bad idea to follow the hand, but Naruto also was extremely curious about who the hand belonged to. Somebody had seen him, and decided to hide away from him in an alley instead of talk to him. Not to mention the heroes today had been really boring. This seemed kind of fun. You aren't going to stab me if I go over there, are you? Naruto called out into the darkness. You would look cute cut up. Cool, honesty, points for that. Naruto grinned and started to walk deeper into the alley. At least the person was being honest about the fact that they were going to try and stab him. So, I'm Kurama. I know everything about you. Creepy and rude. Naruto turned the corner, and saw nobody was in that part of the alley. Raising an eyebrow, Naruto walked further into the alley. Super fan, Naruto stated, and oddly enough, he wasn't feeling anyone around. Naruto blinked when he felt pain though. He felt pain slash through his back. Of course I know everything about you, you're like the coolest. I like you, I wanna be you. A box cutter tore through the back of Naruto's shoulder, and he jerked away from the girl that had dropped out of nowhere. Naruto grabbed onto his shoulder and jumped away from her. The fuck? Dropping in out of nowhere, and taking people by surprise is my thing, and how the hell didn't I sense her? It's like she wasn't even there. Naruto thought as he kept his eyes on the girl. She didn't chase him though. She looked at his blood that was dripping off of her box cutter and letting it drip on her face. Other than her freaky grin and super sharp canines, she was pretty cute, wearing a high school girl's uniform and her hair done up in messy buns. Her face and eyes gave off a very vampire vibe with the way she was looking at his blood so lovingly. I was totes right, you look cooler when you're bleeding. You never bleed when you fight heroes, so I wasn't sure how you would look bloody. I followed you, and 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 followed you. The girl kept on repeating it as she started to lick the box cutter that had his blood on it, letting the blood smear on her lips. But you never bled. Naruto narrowed his eyes. You know, it's really my thing to be a sneaky little villain, don't steal my thing. But Naruto-chan, I've been following since your first year as middle school. Don't you remember me? I honestly can't say I've ever seen you before. Naruto was now alarmed when his real name was used. Only 3 other people were supposed to know who he was. The guy who paid Jiren and gave him clothes, Jiren, and Pop Step knew who he was for real. Nobody else was supposed to have that information. You've been stalking me for 3 years. Naruto asked when he stood up straighter, never taking his eyes off her once. She was blocking the only exit. Wait, he was being stupid. Of course I have, I really like you. I wish I knew where you lived now. You're not in the orphanage anymore, and I really miss watching you sleep. You've got a really cute sleeping face. She spoke with her grin splitting her face almost literally as she gave him crazy eyes to match them. Naruto used a free hand to reach back, and he traced the size of the slash wound. Fuck, it was a good 7 inches in length easy, and it was bleeding pretty heavily. Thanks to his toad quirk, the bleeding would stop before it got dangerous. His healing slightly faster thanks to the nature of his quirk, but the fact remains that he was bleeding a lot, and a wound like this would still need to be treated. Who are you, and how did you sneak up on me? Naruto asked her with narrowed eyes. The answer would decide his reaction to her. Oh, when I hold my breath, and clear my mind, it's like I don't even exist. I'm Himeko Toga, call me Hime-chan. Himeko introduced herself as she got into a fighting position, and started to eye his body. She looked for the next part of his body that she wanted to cut. I've been trying to hold back for years, it's been so hard not being my real self. I know almost everything about you, like how, thanks to your quirk, you've sadly stopped bleeding already. Himeko couldn't hold herself back anymore. She chose this alley. When she saw the news report Naruto was in this area, and this place was close to where All Might's building was. She knew that he had to be getting fed up, it was in his nature to be an attention hog. He would naturally go crazy, and she would admit, her plan required a lot of luck to work. So, you don't know where I live now, oh thank God. Naruto sighed in relief, before he jumped when she got in close and her box cutter bit into his chest. He dodged most of it, but across his right pec, he got a light cut that stung like hell. She swung a second time quickly, far too quickly for his liking. Hey now, I don't hit girls, also. Ow. Naruto jumped out of her reach and rubbed his bleeding chest, stopping the bleeding. She nearly licked his blood again. You put poison on my box cutter, you let me cut you that time, you're so nice to let me do that. I was hoping you would like the box cutter again. Well, that plan is out. Can't believe I'm about to do this. Today just isn't my day. You might be sneaky, but I have one advantage over you that will end this. Naruto grinned under his mask, since she was blocking the only normal exit. Normal exit, Toad quirk, I can jump. Naruto shouted as he jumped high enough to scale the entire building, and landed on top of it. He looked at her down below, before he jumped over several buildings and started to make his escape. The rapid movements allowing him to cross a larger distance than she would be able to cross. I was right though, that was exciting, also. I hope this is my only stalker. I don't think my heart can take this stress. Naruto held his chest, since he was pretty sure he was going to be having nightmares tonight. That girl was freaky. You didn't think you would escape me that easy, did you? Shit. How? And why? But most importantly, stop stabbing me. Naruto felt the box cutter go across his back again. He might have a toad quirk, but he didn't feel like being dissected today or any day. Himeko had followed him to the top of the rooftops, how he didn't know, and had thrown a box cutter into his back, before she pulled it out herself. But I want you to bleed more. This bitch was crazy. With Nimari later. Finally. Got everything done today. Naruto likes to stay out a long time, so I can use this as a chance to start dinner and run the bath. Nimari stretched out her back. She had been stuck to her chair all day, grading homework, making test plans, and doing the paperwork for her hero activities. Not to mention she was going over the hours for the sidekicks that she had employed at her agency, so that they could be properly paid for their efforts. She had a very busy day, hadn't really had much of a chance to do anything, but thankfully she would have some more free time for the near future. She heard the sound of the door opening up. I'm home. Welcome home, Naruto. I was just about to make dinner. Any ideas on that? Nimari was stretching her legs out, since they had fallen asleep on her. She looked back at Naruto. Naruto had his left eye closed, with a long cut going across it, 5 cuts across his chest, no doubt a bunch on his back. His left arm had a box cutter snapped off in it, the blade stuck in his arm, and his right arm was hanging limply at his side. His legs were undamaged, with almost all of the damage being on his upper body. None of the wounds were bleeding anymore, other than where the box cutter was still shoved into his arm. Quote, I want ramen. I've had a really bad day. No shit. Nimari was on Naruto in a second as she grabbed him by the shoulders and turned him around to look at his back, which had easily a dozen wounds on it. His body looked like he had been put through a lawnmower twice. None of the wounds were shallow either, and she didn't understand how he hadn't bled to death already. Is your eye okay? What happened to you? Who did this? Nimari asked him as she put her hands on his face and examined his eye. She opened it up forcefully, and she saw with some relief his eye itself was okay, he wouldn't lose it. She looked down at his arm, and she grabbed the broken box cutter, and pulled it out of his arm. Naruto held back the shout at that one. Naruto, who did this to you? I got jumped by a gang. There were like 16 of them, with box cutters. Naruto was not going to admit that one girl was able to do this to him. The fact she was able to hide from him and his quirk was freaky, and the fact that she was so quick and agile was worse because of her stealth abilities. He had never even known which direction she would come from, and whenever he took his eyes off her for even a second, it was like she vanished. She was his quirk's natural enemy, a person who his spatial awareness did not sense when they tried to sneak up on him. We should go report this to the police, and get you to a hospital. The people who did to you need to be brought to justice. We can't let them get away with this. I won't let them get away with it. You should have called me the moment it happened, Naruto. What if you had bled out? Nimari started to shake him at the shoulders. She gripped his shoulders hard enough that her nails were digging into his skin. She was really worried and angry. I'll be fine. The cuts aren't too bad. They'll heal soon enough, and because of my toad quirk, I won't even scar from it. Naruto wouldn't even get scars from his wounds. Only his pride would remain wounded, but now that he knew he had a stalker, and there was something that could get around his spatial awareness, he had something he could work on. Naruto, we have to go to the police, and you need to be checked out. This isn't me asking you as Nimari, I'm telling you as Midnight. What those boys? Girl. It was a girl, just one. I learned I have a stalker, and she surprised me. Anyway, I already took care of her. Naruto had to admit the truth of the gender and number, because he couldn't really afford to give the police a lie that would be so hard to believe. Anyway, I already know who it was. Himeko Toga. I could really use a bowl of ramen and a bath right now. With Himeko. Hey. He doesn't hit girls. That makes me special. Himeko whispered to herself as she recovered from the poison she suffered from. Naruto hadn't held back when he punched her in the face. Her nose was bleeding heavily, covering the lower half of her face in her own blood. Her left eye was swollen shut, and she had a nasty bruise on her cheek. He had punched her in the face a few times, along with other parts of her body. He never punched any of those dumb heroes, but he punched her. She was special, because she was the only person that he attacked. Himeko licked her own blood from her lips, and giggled to herself. Out of everyone he took down, she was the only one he used violence against, and he did it oh so brutally too. She really liked him. Back with Naruto. Yes. A young girl, blonde hair, sharp canines, petite figure, high school age. Himeko Toga is her name. His wounds are stab and slash wounds, inflicted by a box cutter. She admitted to stalking him for years. Yes, no, he doesn't know where she is now, thank you. Nimari got off the phone moments later, since Naruto didn't want to personally visit the police. She let him go and run a bath, and since he had school tomorrow, she would make him visit the school nurse and have him get his cuts healed up by her. You didn't have to do this. Naruto mumbled to her. She put her phone down. Yes, I did. You know how you take care of the orphanage children. Well, guess what, that is what I'm supposed to do for you. You're hurt, now strip down to your underwear while I go run a bath. I'm going to apply some basic first aid to make sure that you don't get an infection. Nimari gave him his orders as she started to leave the room. Once she was done treating him, he was going to take a bath, and eat a good dinner, before going to bed early so that he could get a good night's rest in. When Naruto stripped down and sat down, Nimari came back into the room with a first aid kit. I won the fight, but the fact she hurt me so much, the fact she stalked me for years. I've gotta learn how to feel when she is around. Naruto thought as Nimari started to clean the blood off his body to see what wounds were in the most need of cleaning. She winced every time he winced, and she looked to see a large wound that went above his heart. Seriously, you should have gone straight to the hospital and called me. You're really hurt, and your skin is cold, you've lost a lot of blood no doubt. Nimari felt his pulse and how weak it was. The fact he was even up right now could only be because of his quirk helping him out so much. If his quirk wasn't a mutation type, then he would have passed out and died by this point. Naruto wished she would stop talking, because the more she talked, the worse he felt about this. I get it, do you? Because I feel like you're going to ignore me, and the next time you get hurt, you won't ask anyone for help. You're young, and you need to learn that you don't have to handle everything alone. Also, sorry this is going to hurt a lot. Nimari started as she started to dab ointment into the larger wounds, a green paste that would prevent the wounds from reopening in the bath. I'm going to have to put this stuff back on before you go to bed. It really stinks. Naruto had the smell of it overrun his nose, and he almost couldn't handle it. Good. Sorry, I don't want to be harsh. I'm just really mad that this had to happen to you at all. Nimari growled under her breath. She knew that because of her personal attachments to this case, she wouldn't be allowed to partake in it at all. It pissed her off that her new son had gotten so badly wounded, and she wasn't able to do anything but report it to the police and apply a minor heal to it. Turn around, Nimari told him, and he did as she told him. The wounds on his back looked far worse than any of the others. He wasn't going to be sleeping on his back for a while, and bending over for anything would be a horrible experience for him. Nimari started to apply the ointment to his back wounds, and she saw one that went from his lower hip into his underwear. She stabbed my ass. I promise I will not laugh at this. Nimari maintained a professional tone, which Naruto gave her credit for. She applied the ointment to the injured area carefully, before she was done and rubbed the top of his head. You take a nice, long, relaxing soak and I'll get some ramen cooked up. If you don't mind the instant stuff at least. Nimari didn't have the stuff to make home-cooked ramen, but she had enough of the instant to make a decent meal of it. When Naruto left to take a bath, Nimari growled and bared her teeth. She knew she could not come face to face with this girl, or she would do something that she wasn't allowed to do as a hero. She would beat the girl within an inch of her life, and make her suffer for what she did. That was against her personal code, and excessive violence was against hero rules anyway, without good reason. Revenge did not constitute a good enough reason for excessive force though. Nimari. Yeah, Nimari asked when she saw him stick his head out of the bathroom. Thank you. And just like that, his head went back into the door, and she just smiled to herself when she got a thanks. She didn't get those a lot, so she would value the fact that he appreciated what she was doing for him. That thank you sounded like it hurt him to say it, which meant he really did mean it. He did not want to tell her that, and did it anyway. He told her he didn't hate her. He also thanked her. Even though there was a long way to go before he saw her as his family, she felt like she had taken a good step in the right direction with this. You're welcome. Next day. This hurts more than actually getting stabbed does. Naruto shouted out as he was given a big wet kiss by Recovery Girl, and his wounds were healing like they had never been there. But still, being given a healing kiss by an old granny, that didn't hurt his body. No, that hurt something worse, that hurt him right in his already damaged pride. Oh, shut up, you big baby, you're lucky you don't need surgery as well. Recovery Girl added, since his wounds could have easily required surgery as well as a healing were he somebody else. So, you got yourself a stalker with a love for cutting. Most boys have to stop their girlfriends from cutting themselves. Not you though. Recovery Girl made a small joke at his expense to lighten the mood. She offered him gummy bears moments later when his wounds were fully healed, and Naruto moved his arms around and twisted his back. He was a little sore, but otherwise, his wounds felt completely better. Haven't I suffered and I don't need a gummy bear? Naruto pointed out when she practically pushed it towards his face. Naruto sighed and in the end took one of them, swallowing it with one bite. Is he going to be okay? Midnight, full costume, asked with some concern over him, looking at his now healed body. While his wounds were healed, she didn't know about his mental state, since he wouldn't tell her if she asked. I mean, he learned he was stalked for. I'm fine. Just weirded out is all. You learn you have a stalker, it isn't exactly something that you just accept. It was super creepy. Naruto shivered when he remembered the day before and meeting his stalker. He hoped that he never had the displeasure of meeting that girl again. Hopefully, she found somebody new and moved on since he beat her face up. Not a lot of people wanted to stay with somebody that punched their face a lot like he did. Stay with, he meant to say. Follow like an obsession. Since that was what she was going to him, following him like a creep. You know, I could try and heal these scars on your face. Recovery Girl pointed out as she looked at his face, which the whisker marks. Quote. How did you get those? Midnight asked when she looked at his face as well, since Naruto had never explained where the whisker marks came from. They can't be part of his quirk, since his quirk is toad. It made no sense for him to have them, unless they were scars from something. There had to be a really good story behind those scars, and facial scars could affect a person's mental health depending on how bad they were. Both of the heroes stared at Naruto, in wait of an answer. I mean, they're natural. I can't explain it either. As far as I know, I've had these for as long as I can remember. If this is all, I think I'll go to class now. Naruto got up and made his way out of the nurse's office. Any news on how Kurama got into the school? Midnight asked Recovery Girl, who waited until she was absolutely sure that Naruto wasn't listening on the other side of the door. You know something? Midnight asked when there was a long pause. Quote. It would seem that in the hero class, Class 1A, we have a traitor. Keep an eye on the hero students, a close eye on them. Yesterday, Kurama took down All Might and mocked him with this information. Recovery Girl added, which did support the information of a traitor a little. The fact that based on how Kurama was, he didn't seem like he would lie about this bragging rights made the claim had some validity to it. Midnight seemed shocked, before her eyes narrowed. I'll be sure to keep an eye out. Are we able to rule anyone out at least? Midnight wanted to know who she didn't need to worry about. All Might says Midoriya and Todoroki are clean for different reasons. Since we believe there is a traitor among us, we're going to be secretly moving the date of their training at the USJ. It's too far from the school. A villain could attack, and our staff would have trouble getting there in time. Recovery Girl added with a deep frown, since this meant that they had to be very careful about all the information that they told to the students from now on. It also meant that they were going to be potentially increasing the power of a future villain, so the quicker they could weed out the villain, the better. They would also need to be on high alert for Kurama. They didn't know if he would strike again. So, those are the people in one of the two first-year hero classes. Naruto thought to himself as he sat on top of the school building in his Kurama costume, looking down at the field below. When he had snuck into the school's teacher's room, he had learned that originally today the heroes were going to be going to the USJ training center, but that had been changed when he had tricked All Might into thinking a traitor was amongst the students. Idiot, actually believing him. Still, All Might wasn't teaching the class at the moment, oddly enough, since this was supposed to be teaching. Until he had approached his quirk's 3-hour limit, something Naruto heard the other teachers talking about, something that made sense since Naruto had seen those wounds on the man's side when he was spying on All Might to find the person chance to poison him. He must have overworked himself today before school started. Himiko Toga. She was able to beat my quirk's spatial awareness. By not breathing and clearing her mind. She erased her very presence, and she forced me to actually punch her. Naruto whispered to himself as he thought about his own personal failure, being forced to hit a woman, even though it was something he wasn't truly against. He just found the thought of hitting a woman distasteful. I've got to get some training in, to become a better villain. Naruto muttered as he looked down at the students who were going to be training today. They would make for good training tools, since they had quirks that he didn't know much about, meaning he couldn't prepare for them like he did with the pro heroes. Not to mention there was 20 of them, so they would have the numbers advantage over him as well. Finally, he was going to be using this as training, so he was going to be doing things differently than he normally would. With Class 1A, okay class, this might not have been what was planned for today, but today we're going to teach you how to use your quirk to fight at non-lethal levels. Since, for quite a few people, our quirks could easily turn deadly. Some of us are lucky and only have quirks that are easy to control, and some have harder ones. One of the students rose a hand up. Yes, Iida-kun, Mirko asked as she looked at the class sheet that she had been given. To keep her out of the public eye, in order to recover from her little press disaster, she had been sent to UA as a temporary teacher, a sub who would cover for teachers who couldn't make it. Since All Might was out for the day, and 13's USJ training day was cancelled, that left her to make use of her time with the students. Mirko Dono, is there a reason we aren't in our costumes? Mirko asked with a dumbfounded expression at the stupid question. We're going to be sparring today, you'll be taking turns fighting me, 4-on-1 combat, so you can. Mirko looked at the notes that she wrote on the inside of her arm, so that she could look at the notes that Eraserhead wrote on the inside of her arm. Practice using your quirks at non-lethal levels. Half of the students saw the writing on her arm, and in unison, sweat dropped when they realized that she wasn't a teacher at the school for a reason. Ha 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 ha, okay. What bastard is laughing, because you'll be going first, and I'll take pleasure teaching you how to be non-lethal. Mirko pounded a fist into her palm with a twitching eye when she heard a loud laughter. She looked towards the students, at all of their faces, and saw none of them were laughing. Invisible student, stop your laughing. Mirko could only guess that the one she couldn't see was the one laughing. Ah bun bun, don't you recognize my laugh at this point? I'm hurt, but please, don't stop the lesson on my account. I do love seeing your cute whittle nose twitch when you get frustrated. Kurama. Mirko didn't even get to shout out his name, because the class got to it before her. Hey, can we do this later? I've really got to sub for this class. Mirko's fist was twitching a lot, a vein on it bulging with the desire to punch him. She couldn't though, because she had a class to teach. She watched as Kurama walked towards them with his hands in his pockets, and the class didn't seem sure how to react to him. Don't worry class, he's completely harmless. Naruto poked Mirko's forehead, and her eyes widened when she collapsed on her face, with Naruto walking towards the class. Not today, today I'm going to be changing things up. Naruto's voice was different, it contained a tone that Mirko had never heard before from him. It was a tone that was far more dangerous than what she was used to hearing from him. Hey, hero wannabes. Naruto addressed the class as he picked up Mirko's dropped chart, and started to match faces to names, before he reached into his pocket and pulled out a clear vial with brown liquid in it. Wannabe. Die. Boom. Naruto reacted in perfect time when Bakugo Katsuki used a large explosion from his palms to go rocketing towards Naruto with an angry, aggressive look on his face. When he got close to Naruto, he put his hands in front of him, and they started to glow when he prepared to unleash another, more powerful explosion. Naruto glared at Bakugo, and jumped forward towards the boy's hands, and slammed his forehead into his palm. Bakugo collapsed on the ground, and his explosion turned into nothing but smoke before it could even be released, when the poison started to course through his body. Now, at least let me explain the rules of the game. This is the antidote to the poison inside of Mirko right now. In 15 minutes, Bun Bun will become permanently paralyzed unless she gets this antidote. Take it from me. Naruto put the antidote in his pocket and gestured for the students to rush towards him. Naruto grabbed Bakugo by the back of the neck, and lifted his limp, but growling body up. When I move, you're dead, Kurama. Now, we're just playing a game, the stakes are just higher than normal. Naruto tossed Bakugo a good distance away from where the fighting would take place, onto his face, so that he couldn't do any damage to his surroundings when he realized he could still shoot explosions from his palms if he actually tried to. The class was frozen. Naruto chuckled. 19 vs 1, fair and square. And tell you what, I'll make things a little more fair. I'll only. The second Naruto closed his eyes to gloat, he felt his senses go off. Naruto leaned backwards and he saw a long stream of tape shoot towards where his face had been, and a dark shadow with a raven-like head shot out of a kid's belly and raced towards Naruto. Naruto grabbed Hantasiro's tape out of the air, and yanked on it, before he wrapped it around the shadow's arms and tied them up, and sat on top of the shadow's back. Long-distance fighters had an advantage over him, so Naruto jumped off of the dark shadow's back and cleared the distance between him and the front row of students. Kurama's tactics don't include physical violence. From the news recordings, he seems to rely on his poison to take down people, and he needs physical contact to administer it. Don't let him touch you, and stay 4 feet away from him. Izuku Midoriya shouted out to everyone as Naruto landed close towards them. Izuku raised his arm up, and got ready to make a flicking motion at Naruto. Also, don't stand in front of me. Got it, Deku Midoriya? Deku, that's a cute nickname, but behind me is Mirko. Whatever you're about to do will hit her motionless, defenseless body. Naruto pointed out to Deku as he gestured to Mirko, and Deku lowered his arm with a jolt of shock, like he had forgotten about her. Cold. Naruto dodged a wall of ice that formed between him and the class, a wall that would have consumed him if he hadn't dodged it. Naruto shivered when he realized there was a person who could use his natural weakness against him, but he didn't let much of his reaction show on his face. Bonjour then senior. Stick with French or Spanish, not both. Naruto saw Yuga Aoyama get thrown over the wall with his belly facing towards Naruto, by a large amount of tape around his arm. Out of the corners of his eyes, he saw 2 students running out from behind either side of the wall. Tenya Iida, and on the other side was Mina Ishido, with her shoes off and skating on acid coming from her feet. A laser shot out of Yuga's belly right towards Naruto, while Mina and Iida started to change directions to go towards Naruto. The other students were slower, but they started to come out from behind the ice wall. I've got a gift from my brother. Naruto took a step back and let the laser hit the ground in front of him. As Iida reached where he was standing first, his leg pulled back in a fast kick. Naruto looked at the engine sticking out of the back of his legs, and a smile came over his face. You're Ingenium's brother then? Well then, I guess you're not trying to kick me then, you're going or Mirko. Naruto watched as Iida faked a kick and used the force to propel himself towards Mirko instead. Hero rule: secure hostages first, and like Ingenium, this boy would no doubt follow that rule to the T. Not a smart idea right now. Naruto reached backwards and touched the back of Iida's leg as Mina reached him second. She had acid gathering off her forearms, and she was about to fling it at him. Iida collapsed on the ground behind him as the poison took instant effect. Midoriya was right, he figured out that I would go for the hostage after seeing my quirk, and took me down. Iida laid on the ground defeated, glacking at Midoriya as the boy ran the long way around Kurama to go rescue Bakugo and Mirko. Flashback. Minutes before. Listen, Kurama is a nonviolent villain. He never throws any punches or kicks, because his quirk lets him take people down by touching them. He's also extremely analytical, breaking down how heroes fight, and using their own quirks and personalities against them. But he needs skin contact. Iida and Ishido-san, Iida is going to play bait by faking a kick. Kurama will figure out you're faking, he'll take down Iida when he passes him. Ashido-san, cover your arms with acid, if his poison can't touch your skin, he can't take you down. Deku explained everything that he had learned about Kurama after watching him so much on the news, and even seeing some of the heroes getting taken down in person from the audience on the streets. Ashido-san, when Kurama tries to poison you, pin him to the ground, and Aoyama fire a second laser at him. He is extremely durable, so aim for his head. You're sure this plan is going to work? Ochako asked as she looked at Deku with a curious glance, since he was highly intelligent, but he was far from perfect. He was also a hero, villain nerd, so his information would be very reliable. You're right, I can cover my arms in acid and not be hurt by his poison. Mina realized that she had a type advantage against Kurama's quirk. Right, and he doesn't hit girls, he's made a point to say that. You're the best bet to pin him. If this doesn't work, we need to surround him with anyone who can take out from a range. Asui-san. Call me Suyu. Suyu pointed out, but nodded to him anyway. Suyu-san, can you steal the antidote with your tongue? On it. Present time. Clever plan, using that acid on you to create a poison-proof armor. Let me guess, you're going to take advantage of me not hitting girls, pin me, and have Yuga hit me in the head with a laser, and you're surrounding me with the long-range fighters. In case this plan fails, while the little frog is going to get the antidote with her tongue. Naruto looked Mina dead in the eyes, grinning when he saw her become shocked beyond belief. Naruto raised both of his arms up, and covered both of them in thick poison as well. His weakness to her was also her weakness to him, and Naruto grabbed onto Mina's arms with his own, his poison protecting him from her acid. His hands grabbed her wrists, and he threw her into the air, right towards Mirko, with her acidic arms facing the unmoving bunny hero, who would get injured by the acid. Naruto jumped into the air when ice, tape, a laser, and the same dark shadow from earlier races towards where he was. He predicted Midoriya's plan. How? Naruto landed on top of Mina's back while she was still in the air, and he grabbed both of her arms, forcing them behind her back. He threw her a second time, right towards Deku, and he stopped running towards Bakugo and Mirko when Mina nearly hit him. He was about to catch her. Don't, you'll be hurt by my acid. Suyu's tongue that should have grabbed the antidote, wrapped around Mina and pulled her away from Deku, and placed her on the ground. Suyu's eyes widened as she fell to her knees. Looking at Mina's clothes, she saw that there was poison around her waist where Kurama had landed on her back, and it was a dose large enough to affect even her. He predicted that Suyu was going to go for the antidote, and realized by throwing an acid-covered Mina at Deku, she would save him from the acid, so he used put his acid on Mina so take out Suyu. Momo thought with her eyes widening in fear. Naruto landed on the ground behind Todoroki, who had wielded the ice, and Naruto's legs were frozen in an instant. Naruto used his powerful legs to break out of the ice, and he caught a hold of the back of Todoroki's neck as he tried to get away. Poison touched his skin, and Todoroki collapsed to the ground. Thanks to my costume, the cold didn't get to me as bad as it should have. And the biggest threat is down. Naruto thought as he dropped Todoroki on his face. Endeavor's son gonna be honest here, was expecting more muscle on you. Naruto gave a small tease towards the boy, as his face glowered in rage. Whoa, daddy issues, not my problem, I've got mommy issues. Naruto playfully admitted as he jumped and avoided a laser from Aoyama, who was looking like he was going to crap himself. Ochako placed her fingers together nearby, and Naruto took a step forward when two people dropped from the air and landed behind him. Eijiro Kirishima and Rikido Sato, Kirishima's body looking like a sharp rock, and Sato with his muscles breaking out of his gym uniform, both pulled their fists back. Aura, I'm going to dodge every single punch with a JoJo pose. Naruto stated as he made it a point to strike up a pose every single time he dodged a punch. Naruto gently poked Sato's forehead, and took the muscle giant down in a second. Naruto then took a knee and posed as he placed his hand against Kirishima's face, palming it, as the hardened boy was taken down as well. Two more down. It's like he knows everything I planned. Deku muttered as he stopped trying to go forward and rescue Mirko or Bakugo, unsure if Kurama had already planned for that and had a trap waiting. Naruto frowned a little. Single quote. I'm still relying on my spatial awareness. If Himiko attacked me again, I wouldn't be able to abuse it like I normally do, but how do I train myself in not relying on it, when it's always on? Naruto thought to himself as he looked and saw birds coming from the sky and flying towards him with the apparent intention to attack him. The students were moving into different positions to make room. Deku returned to the flicking motion when he saw he had a clear shot at the villain they were facing, with nobody standing behind him. Zero used his tape to grab both Kirishima and Sato, jerking them out of the way as well. Go for it, dude, Zero shouted to Deku. Sma. Deku collapsed forward before he could unleash his attack, and Naruto smirked under his mask. Deku, don't you know when an object is moving, it tends to want to keep moving? Just because Suyu pulled Mina away from you, doesn't mean all of the poison would go with her. Several drops of poison sprinkled on your body. I knew Suyu would save you, but I knew the poison would still get to you, and though I don't know what your quirk is, it seems powerful, so I figured you wouldn't use it with a risk of hitting anyone else. I figured everyone would clear the way to give you a shot at me. Naruto explained when Deku lost almost all of the strength to even move a finger. Things were starting to get purely frightening for the rest of the students. It's like he knows everything he are about to do. No. It's like he was able to predict how we would use our knowledge of his abilities we've seen him use. And he made a plan taking all of our actions into account. From the very beginning of this fight, he's known, from the first second he saw any of us use our quirks, what he needed to do to win. It's like his brain works differently than ours does. Momo thought with widened, frightened eyes, as she started to back away from Kurama, slowly, step by step. Her hands went up to her mouth, the sudden realization that she didn't know what she could do coming over her. She could come up with a plan, but would whatever she planned, be what Kurama knew she was going to plan out, and thus be playing right into his hands? She analyzed everything that she had seen so far, and realized that based on that alone, that was the most likely outcome. Fumikage Tokiyami collapsed moments later. What? That dark shadow came out of your body, and it returned to your body. When I sat on it, I put poison on it. That poison got on your clothes, and slowly sank through them to your skin, another one down. Naruto stated as he started to walk towards the largest cluster of students. Naruto glared up at the birds flying at him, and they scattered when they felt their own deaths coming. Sadly, if he poisoned those birds at all, they would die, so he needed to scare them off for their own good. This is the guy who took on all those pro-heroes, this is the guy who beat All Might. Mineta collapsed out of fear and started to crawl away backwards, shaking as he did so. His words, the reminder of what Kurama had done to the strongest hero, seemed to ring true with the rest of the class as well. You idiots, Kurama is nonviolent, no matter what you do, he won't attack. Take advantage of it, and just fucking rush him. Mirko screamed out a reminder to them. They didn't need some smart plan, they just needed to bum rush him. There was a collective face palm when all of them realized that they still outnumbered him, and out of fear for Kurama, they had tried to take him out with their intelligence instead of just fighting him. The villain who never fought anyone, was no doubt more than likely unable to hold up in a straight fight. Mashiro Ojiro, Zero, and Mezzo Shoji were the first wave to rush towards Naruto when they decided to stop thinking, with Koji Kota and Ochako following after them. Naruto blinked. I've got him, Toru shouted when she grabbed onto Naruto from behind, holding her arms around his clothed waist, while she herself was naked and invisible. Can't move now, can you? Punch his lights out, Toru shouted out when Mashiro jumped and got ready to tail slap Naruto in the head. So you've finally stopped hiding? Naruto asked Toru as he leaned forward and let Mashiro's tail smash into the top of her head, knocking her flying. Naruto touched Mashiro's tail and poisoned him. He flipped over Mashiro and touched the top of Zero's head, before he landed on the ground and touched Shoji, taking all four of them out before Kota and Ochako got to him, in less than a second. Owie! Kota froze in place, but Ochako kept running forward, and she reached out with her hands to touch Naruto. Get him when he dodges. Naruto didn't dodge, instead, he let her touch him. Her quirk activated, and she actually grinned when it did. He grin vanished though when he didn't start to float, and his feet stayed firmly planted on the ground. Single quote dot dot dot. His feet, they are sticking to the ground, but his shoes aren't covered in poison. Is his quirk really poison though? Suyu thought as she was given the chance to see that. Naruto put his palm on Ochako's face for her, and she collapsed in front of him as he jumped over it, and touched the top of Kota's head, taking out another 2 students. Only Yuga, Mina, Mineta, Denki Kaminari, Jiro, and Momo were left at this point. All of the other students had been poisoned and taken down. A wall of ice erupted out of Todoroki's body and created a barrier between Naruto and the remaining students, and he was panting with the effort it took for him to even use his quirk. Wow, you're impressive, honest compliment there buddy. Even while poisoned, you used your quirk with that much accuracy and strength, bonus points to you. Naruto clapped his hands, not sarcastically, as he praised Todoroki for his actions. He wasn't given a response other than a glare. But, the little frog isn't the only one with super legs. Naruto mentioned as he jumped clear over the ice wall and looked down at the people below. He landed a few feet in front of them. Mina and Denki stepped in front of the rest. You can't poison me, and I won't let you touch them. Mina's legs were shaking as she shouted at Naruto, her hands raised up into fists. If you touch me, I'll use my quirk to electrocute you, so don't try it, I'm a human battery. Denki forced a calm look on his face. Hey, Muffin Top, tell me, what will happen to Mineta if Denki here uses his quirk on me? What have I done that will make his quirk unwise? Naruto asked with a look at the unsure girl. She froze and looked at the smallest member of the class. Her brain worked at max speed to try and figure it out. You've left an invisible trail of poison on the ground around us, so if he uses his quirk, all of us will be shocked, but you're immune, aren't you? Momo mentioned as she figured out what he had done. What? Denki shouted, and Naruto started to clap his hands. Bravo! I saw you were thinking really hard earlier, and I figured you were the smart type, the type who could analyze everything around her. So, Denki, you were saying? Naruto asked his fellow blonde, who jumped and looked around for anything that he could do. He looked at Jiro, and she refused to take her eyes off of Naruto for even a second, sweat dripping from her face nervously. My stomach is feeling better. I won't miss if I fire from here. Yuga was shaking, but he saw that he had the perfect shot. He took the shot, and Naruto ducked and tossed the antidote up into the air, allowing the vial with the antidote in it to get destroyed by the laser. No, Naruto used their horror and jumped forward, placing one hand on Denki and Jiro's hands, taking them both down. Naruto poked Mineta's forehead, and spun around to slap the back of Yuga's neck as well. Mina, with impressive reflex recovery time, spun around and tried to hit him with acid. He dodged and got away from Mina and Momo as the 4 people he touched collapsed to the ground. Crap, he got us, and I couldn't even help in the fight. Jiro hated the fact her quirk was useless for this type of fight. Since her long-range attack was part of her own flesh, she would have simply been poisoned. You destroyed the antidote, you mon. Oh, there was no antidote, that was just Dr. Pepper in a vial. Mirko is going to be perfectly fine, everyone is, also, thanks Momo. Naruto said as he waved to the girl, who looked down at the Dr. Pepper that was on the ground, splattered like the wound the antidote they thought it was. Wah, what, excuse me, Mina asked as well, not sure what just happened. Truth is, there is no poison on the ground that would have caused Denki to shock everyone. I just saw how afraid she was, and how she looked like she was thinking really hard. She's been frozen in fear for most of the fight, since I beat Deku's plan. She's the analytical type. By playing you all for fools, she assumed I was a step ahead of all of you, and nothing you did could ever change it. Naruto started to explain as he walked towards them, the 2 girls walking away from him slowly. No, that can't be right. Then, when you confirmed my theory. Momo's mind was racing as she spoke. The reason I haven't targeted you this entire fight, because once I noticed you overthinking everything, I realized that you were useful for scaring the others. You were no doubt trying to think of what I was thinking of, and because you think I had you all eating out of the palms of my hands. I was able to make you eat out of the palm of my hand by simply pretending that I had you eating out of the palm of my hand. Naruto explained as it truly sank in, and Momo collapsed to her knees, staring up at Naruto when she realized the truth. Just by looking at the fear on her face, and realizing that she had started to overthink the fight, he had created a future plan that involved her. He had decided that she was useful to him, predicted her personality traits, taken her brain apart piece by piece, and used her as a tool, knowing that she would do what he wanted her with nothing but a few words. It didn't matter what she had said when he asked her what he had planned, because she would have created the answer that would cause her allies to freeze up and give him the chance to attack. I'm sorry, I can't believe me, not to mention, since Mina here has my poison on her clothes like Tokiyami, and hasn't created an armor of acid on her back, she's going to get poisoned like him. Naruto explained as he noticed Mina's legs go completely weak, and her fall to her knees, collapsed on the ground like the rest of the class. Momo was alone now, all of her classmates were defeated. But the antidote was fake. Mirko was never in danger. Then, why did you do this? Momo asked desperately, since he had to have a reason for doing this to all of them. Naruto took a knee in front of her, and his yellow eyes locked onto her black ones. Oh Muffin Top, I'm Kurama. I don't need a reason to prank people, Naruto told her jokingly as he pat the top of her head. Naruto got up and started to walk away. This didn't work. This type of training wouldn't help him stop relying on his quirk, meaning he was no closer to finding a way to protect himself against Himiko better than before. I'm a failure. Damn it, she sounded broken emotionally. You're not a failure, you failed, that is it. Despite what everyone thinks, heroes are human too, and humans fail sometimes. Every hero who has gone against me has failed, but because they believe in themselves, they use their failures to improve themselves. So, be a proud failure and use this as a chance to learn, so that next time we meet, you'll win. Naruto turned his head and spoke to her. She sounded broken, too broken for his liking. The rest of the students were scared, but this girl had taken it far worse than the others seemed to. He didn't want this to ruin her dreams. He didn't want to cause permanent damage. I can't beat you, no matter how hard I try, don't mock me. Just a few days ago, I lost to a girl that utterly destroyed me. I might have beat her in the fight, but that was only because I did something I hated, and used violence against a woman. As far as I'm concerned, that girl could have killed me at any time. I'm a failure too, but look at me, I'm trying to get better, so it doesn't happen again. Kurama, I'm a proud failure. Naruto admitted to Momo everything that had led to him coming at the class today. He saw shock fill her eyes, before they widened, and he saw something else in them as she gazed at him. The unshed tears that had gathered at her eyes, she wiped them away and smiled at him. I'll get better and capture you, Kurama. I'm a proud failure too, so watch me. Good to hear, because talent and practice are pointless for people who don't have the guts to never give up. Naruto cheered her on, and she nodded her head as he tensed up his legs and jumped away. He left Momo alone, surrounded by her downed classmates, her eyes sparkling with admiration as she looked at Kurama vanish from sight. With Naruto, good thing class for them was outside, so the other teachers would just think the fighting was a training routine. Naruto spoke lowly as he crawled through the bathroom window while using his quirk to be cloaked from the cameras outside. Naruto got into the stall with his clothes, and started to change into them. He had failed. He hadn't grown any stronger or better because of his training exercise, so he needed to think of something that would actually help him grow out of his weaknesses. At this rate, he would never improve. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as well as checking out the author on fanfiction.net.